My name Yes.
Aloha.
Good morning.
Yes.
I'm Stardust.
And I'm MadKatMelody.
And you are tuned into Pragma Pod, the all things anime podcast, presented by Pragmatic Aleatory.
Yes.
All right, Pragma Pod returns after the long-awaited slumber. That makes no sense.
kind of like the ending of this series.
No, please.
Hey, Pragma Pod returns after. All right, guys, we're back.
Prolonged.
Let's get into it. We're going to talk about Wonder Egg Priority. A bit of a disclaimer: if you have not seen this series in its entirety, I would not listen to this episode. This is for people who have already completed the series. It's not going to be how it was prior. My brain died. It's not going to be how it was prior as far as the formula of our discussion is going to be a bit more scattershot. Who wants to go first?
Well, I do have a couple reviews.
I remember this.
Yes. So, some things change, some things stay the same.
Okay.
We'll talk about these because normally I get a lot of kind of flippant or ridiculous reviews, but some of these are actually thought-provoking, and we should talk about them. Okay, so the first review comes from Rebel Panda. The Akkas are the author's mouthpiece because he cannot trust us to think on our own. And the next review, Single H says, Wonder Egg Priority is baby's first anti-suicide propaganda. Criticizer, with a Z, says, if you don't mind dark and depressing topics and want to learn something from an anime, this shouldn't be slept on. Appreciate that review. Dark Chippy07 says, do you have a comment?
What was the second person's username?
Single H.
Single H, just a single H. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't know. I feel like a username says a lot about a person and like the process in which they use to pick the username. It's very interesting. We should probably talk about that too. Dark Chippy07 says, this final episode is essentially the culmination of too ambitious writing and behind-the-scenes tumult caving in catastrophically that I'm surprised the episode didn't end up being done in popsicle sticks and crayons. We'll talk about that. Because, yes, seriously. The last one, Gens, I'm not really sure, says, their mannequin bodies are pretty suitable forms for their inhumanity. Talking about the Akkas, which I thought was a pretty good comment. And we'll talk about that too.
Could it be Gen Z?
No, it's just GENS. So an S isn't a thing, so I don't know. Gens, maybe? I apologize in advance if I ever mess up anyone's name. And that's the end of the reviews for right now. Anyone have any comments on these reviews? Any props? Any claps?
No, not me.
Harsh. So cold.
I want to say I appreciate Criticizer. I want to say I appreciate Criticizer for, the twist there, because they weren't actually being very critical. They were being very complimentary to the show.
I actually heard something interesting about this show, you guys. I heard this was a very collaborative project from people around the world because of the pandemic. Anyone else hear that?
No.
Yeah, sorry for the delayed response. Yes.
Did hear that.
I don't know. I mean, I don't have anything that's concrete. All I have is rumors. But there was a bit of a troubled production, supposedly. I don't want to turn this into a theory show, but there was a supposed delay. There was an episode that was a recap that wasn't supposed to be, I think. And
yeah, it was never supposed to be, yeah.
7 or 8?
Yeah, It's because like the producer or the director was like hospitalized due to exhaustion. Obviously, I don't know if that's true. That's what I assume is the reason for kind of like the awkwardness of the special and that recap episode. I guess I kind of could see how that's plausible, seeing as like I've never seen an animated television series that's had this level of consistent quality, or even like as high quality as this one has.
Praise.
I mean, it is. It's a higher quality than Violet Evergarden.
I was very impressed.
I'm not sure who did this. What's the production company behind this? I should know, but
is it Cloverworks?
Yes, you are right. And I'm not used to seeing I've never seen a level of quality as this. And PA Works is one of the, in my opinion, the best animation studios when it comes to quality. So just seeing the work and the craftsmanship, I can definitely see how.
What else did they make? Just for comparison's sake.
PA Works or Clover Studios?
PA Works.
PA Works did Hanasaku Iroha. I believe they did Glass Slip. What else did they do? The Eccentric Family,
I haven't seen any of these.
Angel Beats,
Okay, Angel Beats is that.
Kanan. Oh, Sakura Quest was another one. Aquarium no Aquatope, which is a newer anime that's airing now, either airing now or finished now as of this recording.
Mhm.
They have a level of quality that's often not matched.
I think across the board, this got a lot of really good reviews, and I can definitely see why. I mean, the whole time you're watching it, you feel sucked in and intrigued and delighted, even though nothing's happening. It's like those moments that are they're just beautiful. Like, whoever did this, I'm like, man, this is a good job.
It's film-like, you know? You don't typically see this in TV shows, you see it in films. So it's very surprising. And the fact that it's consistent, like, I can only think of one run animation, one or two, that looked pretty janky, but other than that, it's just a high mark of craftsmanship. So, yeah.
What do you guys think of the opening? I loved it, but I want to hear what you thought first.
Well, how about you, MadKat?
I mean, it's obvious. I mean, I don't want to say obviously, but it's very good. It's something I could listen to. You know, the music is something I could listen to even if I'm not watching something.
Yeah.
The opening and the closing, both. In fact, there's a lot of songs I liked in it. I did think the closing was kind of weird because a lot of times the episode would end on a certain emotional note,
Mhm.
and then you'd get the closing, and I was thinking that, you know, the tone of the closing doesn't fit, and the tone of the closing music, because when I first started watching, because you said Wonder Egg priority, right? And so when I first started watching it, I did very much think it was like a movie when it first started. You know,
Really?
it first had this credits. Yeah, I was like, okay. And then I realized it was a series, and I was like, oh, wow, that was a good opening for that series. But then you get to the closing, and the closing very much sounds like an episodic, like light, fun, sitcom-y adventure type song, you know? Whereas it's a lot heavier
Yeah,
and a lot more.
It does actually. It does. There's
Yeah,
maybe
like-
that was on purpose, like the very stark contrast.
Maybe because the opening very much seems like, oh, you know, life is harsh, and maybe what's harsh is about it is what makes it beautiful, which is kind of fitting for like a show about suicide. But the end is like, I don't know, it's like, you know, kids that have never had any concept of suicide at the end there. It was weird.
Yeah, like a happy little dream world.
Yeah, and a lot of times the episodes would end with like gore or something tragic, and then the
They
music
really
would start,
did, yes.
you know.
I do agree with you that the tone of the ending did not always match the atmosphere of the ending. I don't particularly care for the opening. As far as like the actual song, I don't care for either of them. I do like the visuals though. The visuals seem to be mixed media art. Seems like you have a bit of traditional as well as CG as well as real life photography, if I can recall correctly. And it's done in a way that kind of intertwines very cohesively. Like it's not disjointed. It doesn't feel disjointed to me, at least. As far as the score of the series in general, I think the score is phenomenal. I'm unsure how to go about pronouncing the name of the primary artist. I'm going to give it a go and say Didi Mouse or Dede Mouse. I'm just going to go ahead and apologize now for my incorrect pronunciation. One of the people that contributed to the score is Mito from a Japanese music group called Clambon, who has been one of my favorite bands since I was a kid.
Ambon.
I mean, they're up on YouTube if anybody's interested in checking them out in their spare time, but
How do you spell that?
Clambon or
Yeah.
Clambon.
Oh, like an actual clam.
So Kuramubon comes from this old Japanese story by Miyazawa Kenji. I don't remember the name of the book though, but you know.
Is it a ghost story?
I don't think
Of
so.
Japanese ghost stories.
I don't know. But yeah, the OST is super good, and it's got an excellent wide variety of music selection in it. And I will say, I think the series could have did a little better having the OST implemented.
Yeah, I went over when I stopped at one time.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, I want to find this song. And so I started listening to all the tracks on the soundtrack on YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
And I found myself thinking, because I have a playlist of like songs that I want to listen to if I'm studying or if I'm staying up late to do work. It'll just, you know, like mentally put me in that zone. And I was like, wow, it's been a while since I found songs that I think I could add to that playlist. And a lot of them were on here, or, you know, a few of them.
Can you actually do work with songs in the background? I struggle with anything that has actual words because I think my brain attaches to the words.
Well, yes, most of the songs in that playlist don't have any lyrics, but a lot of the lyrics in these songs I can't understand, so it's the same to me.
Oh, okay, I see. I got you.
I had a teacher in the 5th grade who said it's impossible to study while listening to music. And I think it depends on the person and the genre of music you're listening to. I think that is a common thing where if it has lyrics, people can't work or study with it. But it just depends. Most of the music I listen to when I'm working is, well, if I'm editing, I'm not listening to any music. But
Yeah, obviously.
That would be really, really difficult. Multitasking is a myth.
I mean, I've done it before. I just crank the editing audio up to like 100 and put my music to like 2. And it's like no lyrics in the music. It's just instrumentals. But yeah, I think it just depends on the individual, you know? I find that if you're listening to more vibrant, energetic music, you got like electric guitars going off everywhere and like this heavy drum and bass type post-punk hardcore techno beat, then maybe you're not going to have the easiest time studying, you know?
Sometimes I do like, turn into like a study habits review, but I think that sometimes I'm in like, I need like slow music. Sometimes I need like much faster music because I'm like, I need to stay awake.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah, I need something
yeah.
in the middle.
Oh, okay.
Because I've noticed sometimes I'll listen to something too hardcore and I just want to get up and do something. And then sometimes I'll listen to something a little too like reverent or somber, and it'll just make me want to sit there and like stare out the window into the gray sky.
That's a good song by another Japanese band, Gray Skies by Lamp. Great song.
Okay.
Lamp, that's the name.
Yeah, Lamp.
So you said earlier...
Should have like a special like music recommendation period in this show.
I don't know if I would. I think I'm good at giving opinions, not recommendations. Like, I'm good at saying what I like. I've never been a guy that's like, oh, I recommend.
I feel like everybody's opinions are recommendations.
I disagree. I think sometimes people take my opinions as recommendation. Like, for me, usually when I'm giving a recommendation, I state it. And I state like, hey, you should check this out. Like, I think before when I just talked about Wonder Eggs OST, I said, if you have the free time and you're interested, maybe check it out. I think I said something along those lines. But
you know what? I think both of you are actually correct, because I think MadKat's opinion is probably what he would recommend, and I think yours are what you would not recommend, because other people probably wouldn't like it.
I'd have to agree.
No, it's a learned behavior, because I used to recommend things and I would be like, hey, you should watch this movie, and they'd be like, yeah, I probably won't, right?
Yeah.
And I'd be like, oh, but I think specifically you would like it.
Well, that's so nice. That actually takes a lot of forethought.
Well, people tend not to didn't respond to that well, but now I'll be like, hey, I like it because of this and this and this.
Yeah.
And they'll be like, oh, well, I wasn't going to see that movie, but now I do want to see it, so thanks. And they'll walk away and I'll be like, oh, crap, like, I didn't mean to, like, I was saying why I liked it. If I thought they were taking it as a recommendation, I would have said different things, like.
Yeah.
So I try to be careful now to say things, even if I'm not recommending it, they might take it as that. So I try to be mindful of that.
It's so weird, because I would actually, I love when people do that, and it's very rare. I think most people do state their opinions, and I do have another friend, and he's like, yeah, this is really good, you probably wouldn't like it, or yeah, this is, most people wouldn't like this, but I think you really would, and I love that, because I'm like, okay, now I have a reason, because I assume my friend does know me, right? So I'm like, okay, maybe I will look at this movie, or see this thing, or try this food, and they're usually correct.
See, if somebody recommends something to me, and I want to watch it or listen to it as soon as possible, not for that media, but I want to watch it or listen to it because I want to see what they see in me. Like, why did they think I would like this? And what does that mean that they, look at me as,
I think that's an excellent way to look at it. Maybe I should adopt that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it makes everything better. Because even if it's a
It
bad
does make
show,
everything better.
even if it's a bad show, you can be engaged. Like, did they think this would be my favorite part? And it's
Yeah, no, I don't agree with that anymore. But the initial premise, I agree with.
No, I like that.
And Stardust, I think your experience is the most common experience, in my opinion, where most people do be like, hey, no, I don't think you would like that. The way I approach it is probably not as common. And that's just because, I don't know, I guess with the majority of things.
Because you like weird shit.
Not even that, but I don't think it's weird, but like the majority of things that I find interesting, it's kind of like when your parents buy you clothes for Christmas.
Oh god, it's the worst.
Like, that's how it is whenever somebody recommends anything to me. And I know like people will be like, oh, you're a film snob. Like, people get offended sometimes when you never like their recommendations. So I typically just don't take recommendations. Like, if I'm not interested in it or I watch a trailer and it doesn't captivate me, nothing about it does, then I'm probably not going to check it out. Every now and then I will. I'll give a good example. It's the first Hitman's Bodyguard. I had a buddy of mine who was like, well, we typically like the same films, which I disagree with. And he recommended I watch the Hitman's
best.
Bodyguard. And I hated it. I hated it so much. And this was like the third film that he recommended that he was like, oh man, you would like this. And I was just like,
Do you feel bad to tell them, like, if you don't like something that they recommend for you, like, because they're so excited, like, that you would like it?
it depends on the person.
So you just don't like some people and you just want to hurt their feelings?
No, I don't know. With him, I usually was like, yeah, man, it just wasn't my thing, you know? Like, I'm sure other people would like it, but it just wasn't for me. Honestly, I only give recommendations to one of my friends. Me and her just share, like, a love for horror films. So that's that's really the only friend that I'll recommend a movie to. So we have, like, a common understanding with horror films. She knows my level of toleration for certain horror films, right? So she'll be like, hey, this is a horror movie. It's stupid, but I think you have a good time with it, right? And I know, like, I can't come to her and be like, hey, watch this Thai horror film. Because I know she can, like, subtitles, no, I'm out, you know? So.
Oh, God, I hate when people say that. It's so frustrating. Oh, I can't watch anything that has subtitles. Are you illiterate? Seriously, I just don't understand it, and I suppose it's because I've been using subtitles since I was very young, because I've been into anime and Japanese language before I studied it for so long. I'm just like, I don't even notice when they're on, but like I'll hang out with certain people where they're like, oh, can you turn off the captioning on the TV? I'm like, I didn't even know it was there. I just don't notice it.
I have a different.
What was that? What's that, MadKat? Are you short circuiting?
It's like somebody was like putting their hand over your mouth as you were trying to speak.
You have a gag order on you?
Well, earlier you were saying, like, you mentioned multitasking is not a thing. Right?
Me or Star?
Stardust. said
I
that.
did. That's true. I stand by that.
So, like, I remember watching when I first watched Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon.
Mm-hmm.
It was in subtitles. It was a version that had subtitles, and I would like go recommend it to other people because I was young and dumb, right? Not because Crouching Tiger is bad, just because like I didn't think about all the ways that people like Kip would not appreciate other people's recommendations back then. But I would go watch it with people, and then I'd be like, oh crap, this has subtitles, because I didn't remember. Like, I watched the movie in subtitles.
Right, exactly. It no longer matters.
However, when I'm watching a movie, I very much, like, even if it's in English, I can't not read the subtitles, which I've come to appreciate, because I enjoy when the subtitles are different than the spoken words, and I'll be like, hey, look, I just noticed something that not everybody would notice. But I find myself, like, my eyes, like, I've tried to train myself now, where I'm like, look at the person's face, their face is up there, the words are down there, try not to see the words, try to block them out, and I'm so bad at it. And I can appreciate someone who, because I can watch a movie with subtitles, I just want to be able to control my brain, and that's why I practice that. But I can appreciate someone who is like, oh, well, there's two different places I'm supposed to be looking at, the actors' reactions and at these words, and I don't want to have to multitask. I can appreciate somebody that is afraid of doing that and not getting missing things in the movie.
Yeah, I mean, because it's true, like, you are technically shuttling your attention back and forth, and obviously the faster you do that, the more you'll catch. So it's kind of like a great mental test on both areas, right?
Yeah.
Like, how fast can you read the first couple of words, infer meaning while looking at their expressions, and then read the next few words in the sentence. But I think most of us just read the end of the sentence first anyways, because the ending usually has a lot of information.
Wait, you read the end of the sentence first?
Sometimes.
Yeah, big fella, you dyslexic. I think everybody probably looks at it differently. I used to feel the same as you do, where I'm like, oh, it's so annoying. I do think those people are missing out on so much
totally.
of the beauty in foreign cinema. But I will say, like you said, you read the end of the sentence first. Me, I just feel like it's like
Sometimes.
I'm looking at the whole screen. So like it just, as I'm looking at the visuals, I'm also looking at the words. So that's kind of how I view it. But with people that don't.
Because you're a genius.
I'm definitely far from, I'm like one of the biggest dummies on the planet. But
I don't think that's true.
People, that's very kind of you. But for the people that...
I'm a very nice person.
Shut up. For the people that are like, oh, I don't do subtitles right.
Wait, I'm sorry, what, Coop?
I said 2 different ways to take compliments.
That's MadKat, by the way.
That made it
Is there
Oh, I missed you
a
guys.
word for people that listen to something in a dyslexic manner, like, or just jumble it? That wouldn't even apply to that. But for the people that are like, oh, I can't do subtitles, I used to feel Stardust frustration. But now the way that I look at it is that if it's not something that you're accustomed to, you're applying more mental energy because you're feeling like you're missing out on the visuals. I've watched something foreign with numerous people that didn't do subtitles and I had subtitles. And they kept asking me to pause it. They were like, can you pause it? Can you pause it? Because they would just wanted to make sure they read everything perfectly. So it's a chore. And when you're watching a form of media, if it starts to feel like a chore, then you're disillusioned with it. You're no longer engaged with it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's 100% true. You have to just, suspend your belief, and that might be hard to do if you're spending a lot of time reading.
I think I look at it as a skill that you have to build up.
I never thought about it that way, but that definitely seems to be true.
It's not an issue for me or you, but if we had never watched anime in foreign cinema, then maybe it would have been, And also, there are some dubs that are just atrocious.
Like there's so many dubs that are atrocious.
I will say, it's gotten better than what it used to be, and there are some dubs that are atrocious that are completely full of nostalgia for me that I love. But I can see both sides of the coin, I guess.
Yeah, I mean sometimes the dubs are excellent, and I feel like the voice actors actually fit the characters better, and there's more diversity than I think typically Japanese voice actors will have. Then there's the other side, and I'm like, oh god, it's so bad.
For Samurai Champloo or Cowboy Bebop, I would tell people to watch the dub, watch it in English.
Yeah, I think we did it. Yeah, we did. I think When my boyfriend made me watch Cowboy Bebop, and I'm glad that he did. We watched it I think we did both, but I think we primarily did English because that's how he watched it.
Speaking of how we watch stuff, what did you guys watch Wonder Egg Priority in?
Where did I watch it?
Not where.
What language?
What language?
Oh, I always watch in Japanese nowadays.
Yeah, I watched it in Japanese. How about you, MadKat?
See, I went back and forth because, like I said, it's the same thing as when I want to listen to the dub and watch the subtitles because I want to see how different things can be interpreted. So especially when I would, sometimes I would basically watch one in Japanese, one in English. But a lot of times if somebody said something, I might wonder like, oh, how did they do this in the other version? And
that's super interesting. I agree with you, MadKat. I think that's a great idea because you get a different element of it. And mine's accidentally started playing in English a few times, and I let it play for a little bit because it is interesting, and I switched it back.
You did that with Steins Gate as well, didn't you?
Yeah, I did.
Just wanted to bring up Steins Gate. Go ahead.
With Steins Gate, I very much like certain words. I was like, well, this changes the meaning drastically. Whereas in Wonder Egg Priority, I felt like it was very close. Like I would be like, oh, maybe I'll understand it better if I switch, and I'll be like, nope, I didn't understand it any better.
Sometimes it's better, and sometimes it's way worse. It depends.
You would say it's cohesive across the board.
Yeah, whoever translated it, I think did a lot of good job out there.
Yeah, there's a high, like I said, okay. There's a high level of craftsmanship. Sorry, go ahead, Star.
On the last thing I wanted to say about the opening is that if anyone wants to know what it's like to live in Japan, I really feel like it made me miss daily life in Japan so much. Just like it's just so perfect in so many different scenes where they're just like walking around the city and just eating an ice cream at a cafe. Like those are just very common things. However, the feeling that you get from this opening, that is what Japan feels like to me.
Okay.
I wonder if other people felt the same way.
MadKat?
In the opening specifically.
Well, in the opening feels like if I wake up early in the morning before everybody else does, and the colors in the sky are still changing, and I can just kind of be calm because I always want to be faster than everybody else. But if everybody else is asleep, I win, right? Mm-hmm. So that's what the opening felt like. When you talk about being in Japan, the scenes in the show where they're eating together, sitting on a bench or something, just walking on the sidewalk, I do like. Now that you mention it, I can look back and be like, oh, I do miss feeling like I was in that kind of environment. When I was watching the show, I didn't think about that in the opening or in the show. I was like just paying more attention to like what these girls were thinking.
Mm-hmm.
Now looking back,
I
it's
miss
nice
Japan
to have
so much, and like it was such a good.
Hello?
I cut you off, MadKat. What'd you say?
No, I felt like you cut yourself off. Such a good.
You said it was nice to have what?
It's nice to have that in my memory now because when you mentioned, oh, I miss Japan, I hadn't thought about using this as like, oh yeah, I do kind of miss that, but now I have that perspective, so thank you.
Problem. Okay, what did you think? Because you lived in Japan as well, so like just the subtle piece of it, I guess, in the opening. That's what it reminds me of the most. The everyday.
Yeah, watching it, the opening compared to like everyday slice of life in Japan, it reminded me of when I was a young Japanese girl growing up. It's wonderful.
Shut up, man.
No, I mean I think it's alright.
Did you trim an egg?
We all technically came from eggs, right?
No.
But I don't know.
No way.
I dropped out. So I couldn't tell you.
Yeah.
As far as I know, we came from chickens. I honestly, I have an interesting. I guess how I look at the opening, like on one level, you could be like, yes, this is like moments of Japanese life. Taking the train, walking down stupid long train steps. That's needlessly high.
Yes.
Walking through the
True,
woods.
they are very steep.
Looking at the koi ponds, but I also thought this is my take on it. Like it also represented the beauty of being like in this solemn environment, but also like the loneliness of it as well. Because there were a lot of moments where she was with friends, but there's a lot of moments where she's by herself.
Yeah, that's a good call.
The tone of the opening is happy, but I think it did what the series occasionally did, which is show you something on one level, but have so much underneath it.
Yeah, let me say something about a little praise. I feel like you guys are thus far been very positive towards the show, so I want to mention things later that
Speak your mind, Cat Daddy.
that weren't. Well, no, later. But right now, I do want to mention right now I'm still being positive is what I'm saying. I and other characters, I appreciate that they were very three-dimensional in the fact that like I herself, she starts out, she's talking about her story about how, oh yeah, I didn't have any friends, but like I didn't need friends, that kind of thing. But clearly she wants friends. But
Yeah.
I can relate to the idea that you don't always want to open yourself up because you don't trust what people are going to judge you as. We were talking about that earlier, Stardust, right? But at the same time, I consider myself, and if you look at I, she's very like personable, she's very friendly, she's very good around people. Like it's a sadness that she feels she has to recoil from the social sphere because she can bring so much stuff to it. And it'd be so much easier for a show to be like, oh, because people bullied her, she became this like shut-in personality, or she, even though people bullied her, she goes and runs up to people and she's very puppy-like and playful with them, and so that's why people think she's annoying. It could have been either one of those, but it was more realistic because she had these layers to her.
I agree. It was nice to see layered characters in the anime. I don't want to sound uppity, but a lot of times I feel like anime as of late hasn't had the most dimensional characters. Like it's like what you see is what you get, big dog. My family died, I'm an orphan, I'm gonna get angry and I'm gonna beat the guy with the power of anger. Often my brain compares like mediums of video games, films, anime, books, yada yada, and I'm so used to people kind of shunning certain materials that they deem inferior, like anime and video games, specifically speaking in the context of the narratives for these works. This is one of the examples that I could give. I don't think the series did perfectly on it, but I think it did better than those people that have that kind of judgmental stance on it would perceive it to do. But yeah, that's it. I finished.
I agree. I thought these characters had a lot of depth, and I think just like you said, like they're not your typical anime characters, and like I appreciate that because you're looking at them, you're like, okay, we have this girl who is kind of like the quintessential friendly girl in some regards, but overall, like that's not who she is, right? That's who she wants to be. I think that's maybe who she was before her trauma, before the bullying, and I really appreciated that. It's a nice thing. It's also kind of sad, like, who would you be before life fucked you up?
You can see the tropes, but it goes beyond the tropes.
Right.
Like she even calls Neiru at a point. She refers to Neiru as a tsundere. Neiru does fit that trope, but she goes beyond that trope as well. Rika has her trope, right? Like the blonde hair, foreign looking girl that's like, just completely different from everybody else, super spunky, sarcastic, yada yada. But they go beyond that.
Yeah, they do. Real people.
One of the things I appreciated, not just in like the character archetypes, but in the visuals, was how they played with tropes. Because there's a lot of things like the comfort animals, the comfort monsters that they get are very classic anime that feel like an old like card captors type thing, but I can see something deeper in it. And the monsters, the big boss villains, like I've seen stuff like that before, where it's like, oh yeah, there's this representation of all this other stuff just with big bright lights and colors. But I appreciated like where it was going with it. I think it was Single H said about how this is like a baby's first anti-suicide propaganda.
Right.
Like using these tropes that I've seen in other anime for visuals like that to make monsters, using it for something like this, like making it useful rather than just a whole bunch of shapes and colors everywhere. I appreciated that. And killing, well, yeah, I didn't want to. We're getting into spoilers, but killing the monsters, like having these monsters there to be so cute and so loved, so that you can see something get ripped away, you know?
Yeah, that's a big spoiler. Cause yeah, but I'm with you. I saw in your thing, you mentioned it earlier. Like, what is the point of these magical pets? And I'm like, I was also wondering the same thing.
I've been thinking. It made me. So I have theories.
Do you?
You go into dreams in the show. Spoiler, right?
I'm like, yeah. I guess you could call it that. We go into dreams. I guess you could say that.
And so they have these bad guys, right? They have the see no evils and they have the haters, right? Which are clearly like set up for. I mean, once they got to the haters, I was like, okay, I get haters. Like the bigger you get, the more people come out of the woodwork to criticize you, right? And so that made me look back on the see no evils, because at first I heard see no evils and I was like, oh, that's just a nothing throwaway name. Like that doesn't mean anything. But once the haters thing, because it's so blunt, meant something, I went back and I was like, okay, so are they saying like the bad guys in your life are also the people that don't do anything because they don't want to see what's happening, so you might want to reach out to help somebody, but they're going to be like, no, just suck it up, you're fine, right? So once you have those,
sort of, yeah. I really quickly.
Yeah, okay.
I guess I just wanted to comment on the see no evils things. There's a really huge problem in Japan with bystanders, like just not doing anything or stepping in to help, and like I didn't see anything. I saw nothing. So it's kind of like because she's being bullied a lot, and that happens all the time, and it happens here too in America, of course. Like that's a really big the point of that about that.
I think it's a civilized society type thing where people go through their daily life on a routine, and it becomes the kind of thing where you get afraid for anything to change. And so the more civilized a society is, the more people don't want to change their life, even if their life isn't that great. They don't want to change it. So if they see something, somebody's in trouble or somebody's doing something, all they can think about is how it's going to change things. And so you start like thinking about things, rationalizing things. Maybe they wouldn't like if I helped, if I jumped in. And that's another thing that this show really delves into that I appreciated. But if they don't want your help, kind of thing.
An interesting take on that, honestly. That's a very interesting take on it, because I don't think most people would actually go quite there. Like, if they wouldn't want help, and more it would be more like, what happened to my life if I help?
Right. It's a what would happen to my life. I think it's kind of a selfish thing. You start looking for reasons why not to help. And of course, if you're looking hard enough, you're going to find them. Like, what if that person would, criticize me or call the cops on me because I'm getting it, say that it's none of my business. I'm not, whatever. You're going to find those rationalizations if you look for them.
Oh, definitely. Like, it's true.
Yeah, but in the show, very much like I loved how you set a groundwork for who these victims are, like very early, and then later on, there's a more variety of victims, including victims that are some that don't want help. They're still in that mode where they're like, no, this is good for me, even though it's abused, and some of them that are even helping to fight heroes against the villains. I was like, oh, that's awesome that they included that as a possibility.
I would agree with that.
Yeah, I think it's safe to say we all share that sentiment as far as like you should intervene if you see something wrong. I will say easier said than done. Everybody doesn't intervene for different reasons. Growing up in the hood where I come from, if you intervene, then you putting your life at risk and everybody else
Right. So like that's also one possibility.
Piggybacking off what Stardust was saying about Japan and the issues that they face. I've been to Japan a lot and spent a lot of time in Japan as well. And one of the things that I always was taught by Japanese people was like, don't be a burden to those around you. Don't be a nuisance. And I think they take that and they go above and beyond with it. So even when they see something that's bad that's happening, they don't kind of want to be a part of the negativity. So they just continue on what they were doing.
Yeah, it's like it's none of your business, and everyone knows that. So like, don't draw attention to the fact that someone is having a hard time.
Yeah, and I mean, not every Japanese person shares that sentiment. Obviously, they're not a monolithic group, but I think that is still a common consensus among a decent amount of them. But things are changing in Japan as well as all over the globe. More people are speaking out. Women are thankfully speaking out more for women's rights as well.
Yes, I'm very excited about that. Actually, it's so nice to see it. Obviously, as a woman, I really appreciate that.
Like you said, I also appreciated how you were saying that not everybody wanted to be saved because it would get kind of dull, which I think the series did get a little bit monster of the weekish at a point.
What? Can you explain that?
You know, like a episodic nature.
Oh, I'm sorry. You said monster. I thought you said muster, and I'm like, I don't know what that means.
Mustard.
Mustard of the week. It's Grey Poupon this time, guys.
I thought it did a good job of like they would establish this is the format of the show. They're gonna go into a dream. There's gonna be a big boss at the end. She's gonna say, "Now I'm angry." You know, lights and colors, right? They established that format in like the first 2-3 episodes. By the third episode, they were already like switching things up. Like in the first episode, and I love when you get into like creepy, freaky situation, and the characters have no idea what to do because I feel like I'm in that moment with them. Like, yeah, bro, I don't know what to do either, right? I love that. Where she's like, oh, I have a magic egg. What do I do now? And oh, the toilet paper's talking to me. What do I do now? And I liked being in that moment with her where it's like, I have no idea. Don't look at me. So the first episode was very different from the rest of the show, which is normal, right? But then by the second and the third, you got going. You were like, okay, this is what this show is about. But then, you know, by like the fourth episode, they're introducing more characters. Okay, that's different. And then by like fifth, sixth episode, you start dealing with expanding the world building through these characters and through the dream world and dealing with different kinds of, these monsters are going to be different. And they added different kinds of victims. At one point, they had the victim that was like, you know, she killed herself because she was beautiful. There was the one girl that her abuser was invisible. There were different ways. They kept adding something new. They added different, like the haters, they added the animals. So adding things, I think, kept it fresh. But also, they had this thing where it wasn't, what made it not feel Monster of the Week to me, I think, was their odd approach to time. Like they would go back and forth between the dream dimension and the real world with no account for like until the end of the episode. I really didn't have an idea which came first. Yeah, you know what's happening in what order.
That's very true.
And then at the end,
go ahead.
What?
I'll wait.
It sounded like you were going to have a different perspective about it.
No, I do, but I want to let you finish.
I'm going to let you finish, but Beyonce had one of the best videos of all time.
Well, no, I appreciated that because, I think what they were trying to do, which I don't think got through 100%, was the idea that, like, when you're in a dream, you don't know when the dream started.
It's a really good point, actually.
Right. I think that's what they were trying to do, and I didn't get that feeling necessarily in the show, but what I appreciated was, like, at the end, like, I was piecing together, it's like somebody shattered the episode into shards, and I was putting it together, and by the end of the episode, I was like, oh, now I feel like I see how all this happened, and who knows what at what period. I felt like by the end of the episode, it was simple enough. I was like, oh, I wasn't confused.
You know, when you have, like, your detective stories or whatever, and they do a writing style where you feel like you know what's going on, and then you get thrown for a loop, and then you feel like you know what's going on, and then by the end of it, you just arrive at maybe like 80% or 85% of the conclusion, and you're correct, and then the other 15% like blows your mind. But it feels good because you felt like you did detective work while watching it. Would you say it's in a manner similar to that?
Yeah, I do feel like they gave me some busy work maybe, but I also feel like it felt like they knew. They were like, okay, we know all these tropes you've seen before in anime, so we're going to switch it up. If you do it like that, if you do it, I feel like the reason they do it out of order a lot of times when I see it in shows and movies is so that you don't have to show all of what happened. You know, like you don't have to show someone getting from point A to point C. You don't have to go through point B. They're like, oh, you know what's going to happen, so we can cut to something else, and then we can go to point C, and you get it, right? So they could get a lot more story in a shortened period of time doing it chronologically. I felt like that was part of the thing too, where they were like, you're smart, you know, right?
I just wanted to get a gauge on how you felt because did you finish your statement before I start?
Yes.
I think that there was like a bit of sleuthing to do, but I think the sleuthing was more like the lower level, right? Where
it was simple. Not
lower level of work, but lower level within a foundation, meaning like the imagery of the series, a lot of flower imagery. In the first episode, you have white lilies, you have pink evening primroses. Some stuff wasn't too much work, but then I was like, you know, for people that don't know a lot about flower language.
I don't know a lot about teach me a little bit.
There's going to be stuff that goes,
well, I only know certain flowers.
So flower language has different meanings in every language, but for Japanese, you can literally just type in hana kotoba, kotoba, and that'll give you what you need to know. So all of this stuff had meanings within a Japanese context. Obviously, it's a Japanese show. So I felt like that was more of the sleuthing, and then which I enjoy.
I have a comment about that.
Go for it.
So, because you mentioned flower language, because I don't know a lot of the flowers, otherwise the lilies were definitely like, oh, innocence, like that one's easy. The other ones I'm like, oh. So there has been some work done, some sleuthy work on the flower language in this particular anime, and I want to actually get your guys' take from this inference, because I'm like, I could see how this could be. I didn't make that connection. Now that this person mentioned it, I am wondering. So I will tell them the name of this blog is formeinfullbloom.wordpress.com if anybody wants to visit. So this mentions that where is it? So about the lilies, and there's a few other offhand remarks about our main character, Ai. And I guess because of where the lilies are in the places in certain scenes, this person has inferred that Ai is, maybe that she is a lesbian or is, bi in some way. I didn't personally get that, and maybe that's a part of why she struggles with her classmates, to fit in, maybe. It's not just her eye.
That's a common trope for white lilies in anime, lesbianism, but also in anime, and again, speaking in context within Japanese flower language, because it's different in every language. Lilies can represent a return to innocence. They can represent purity as well. So sometimes I think that people, I feel like I have to put this disclaimer because society today is like, you anti-gay. I'm not. My interpretation of it, specifically the white lily, there's a term, and I'm kicking myself right now because I can't remember the term for it, but there's a term in Japan for young girls' love. And it's not a
yuri.
It's not like a love, like romantic love. It's like a love between two young girls that are friends, and that they're so close. Like they sleep together, like they do everything together, but they're not in love. I can't remember the proper term for it. One of my friends, he has daughters, and one of the girls, she's really close with one of her friends. They're inseparable, dude. Inseparable. Like they eat ice cream together, they hang out every day, they take naps together. And these girls, it's not like they're 4 years old. Over here, I feel like a lot of Americans would stereotypically be like, maybe they just are in love with each other. That's not always the case. I can't remember the proper term. So in reference to Oto and her friend Nagise, that's what I saw it as until the end. Obviously, the end kind of took that interpretation and slapped it out the window. That's how I feel about it. I don't think there were moments in episodes where Oto commented on boys, mainly because of Momose and her struggle with her. She didn't really struggle with her identity. I feel like those around her struggled with her identity.
Yeah.
There's a scene where she's like, oh, I went out on a date. And then they're all like, oh, was he cute? And they seem excited. And they're like, oh, you're so lucky. I didn't get the feeling that Oto was a lesbian. I think she just really loved her friends. I guess considering all that, I didn't get the feeling that she was really concerned until you find out in the series that she has a crush on her counselor.
Hey, counselor, I thought he was just a teacher and that just came to her, her homeroom teacher or whatever.
I think he was both, man. I think he's art teacher, counselor. So I'm not sure where in that blog, when they wrote that article that you're reading, I'm not sure if they had completed the series or they just have watched a little bit. Because if they had started at the beginning of the series, then yeah, maybe they would have thought that. But hold on, let me get that. That's my alarm. Talk amongst yourselves.
I thought we were going to say Taco Monster.
I definitely did sound like tacos. Damn, no, I want tacos.
Well, see, to me, I agree that I thought he was just a teacher. He did talk like a counselor, but I thought that was just part of the familial way that he talked to people to get into their, to break down their barriers and he could get closer to people. And
yeah,
maybe he was too good at being very soft and appearing like a counselor.
What do you guys think about him? Because I thought he was creepy the whole time.
I think he was misunderstood.
I didn't go into it really.
Well, I felt like they did.
Yeah, I do too. I feel like they did just at the end, the last 4 episodes.
Right. I was like, ooh, they're gonna leave this ambiguous, and then there were certain things where I was like, oh, they didn't leave that ambiguous.
No, I think that's one of the few things that they actually wrapped up.
Yeah. I was
well, they kind of
like,
had
oh, wow,
to.
I was surprised that they didn't leave it ambiguous because it would have been fine. It was kind of like what I was talking about before, where it's like, oh, you can fill in the gaps yourself. So we're gonna go deal with this other stuff. But they came down. They had certain scenes where it was like, oh, well, something bad happened there. That wasn't good, which is why it's confusing to me that there was no reaction from Ai where, because she felt guilty about her not helping a friend earlier, right? But at the same time, she still feels seems very close to the teacher, and I would have thought that there would have been more a violent reaction away from that relationship.
One more time, you said she felt guilty for not helping
Her friend, the
Nagase.
yeah,
Yeah, Koito Nagase, yeah.
What was the second part you said?
relationship between her teacher and her to be a lot worse after that.
I think it was. I think she avoided him.
Well, she avoided him, but then at the end of the series, it seemed like she was being less violently, negative towards him.
She matured towards the end of the series. He was going to her house every day. He was with her mom at that point. You remember the episode? Her mom asked her, she was like, I need you to try. I need you to try with him. And they both looked at her and it was like, we want to pursue a relationship. Of course, we don't want to do it if you're not okay with it. And she had that initial angry response where she was like, do what you want to do. It's not up to me, but I'm not going to visit you when I'm grown. And I'm going to put you in a home and I'm not going to take care of you.
Do you guys think that that's okay, honestly, like ethically speaking? Do you think that's okay that
Putting someone in a home?
the counselor dates this girl's mom?
Oh, bruh.
I mean, that's a whole other topic of conversation.
So this guy's a bad guy, right?
Who?
The teacher.
No.
No, he's not a bad guy. I just kind of feel like ethically, I have a problem with the only person that this girl can really talk to at school, like, was trying to help her be like, not hikikomori, like to come back to school and everything. And she's super depressed about her dead friend, which is understandable. And now he's gonna date her mom. I think like that would make everything way worse.
Yeah, he shouldn't.
For the mom too. I think that's a terrible idea.
No, I feel like you can't help who you fall in love with. And I feel like as long as...
I agree. But like the timing.
But you can help what you do with it.
Yes, exactly, MadKat, exactly.
Just like in a good movie, Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, when the main characters, they were in love with each other, but for years, the main characters, for years, they decided that they weren't going to act on their love, because, out of respect for others.
Yeah, see, exactly like that.
It's a conscious decision you can make.
Yeah.
Here's my thing is, of course it is. You can't help who you fall in love with, but you can decide your actions, right? I think they addressed that. She has her anger. It's very much like when a child's parents gets a divorce and then they decide to remarry. It was very much that scenario for her. She had that anger that's obviously going to be there because it's a situation that's different. And she gave them her bitter response and they approached her in a manner that parents should. And you can hold it off as long as you want. But even when she went back into the dream world, if you will, there's a moment in the later half of the series when they're like, your mother deserves happiness too. Your mother supports you with all her heart. It's also your responsibility to support your mother and your mother's happiness. There's a scene where Rika is speaking about her mother because her mother, she has so much disdain for her mother. Momoe is like, shut up. And she's like, I thought you were on my side. She's like, I am. That's why I'm telling you to shut up. You're going too far speaking about your mother in that tone. Like, I understand your frustrations. And that whole time when Momoe is kind of like briefly chastises her, you can see Ai in the corner of the camera just sitting there, sitting awkwardly because she has this disdain for her mother. But when you look at it, her mother's always supporting her daughter and doing her best. And her mother repeatedly says, I support you no matter what. After that, you have a scene where Ai confesses to Rika that, hey, I'm mad at my mom right now too. And Rika's like, your mom is nowhere near on the level of my mom, dude.
That's true. That is true.
The whole time they're talking about how they feel that Shuichiro, the teacher, might be Momoe's niece, and she's like, he's not like that. And they're like, well, maybe he is, and she gets frustrated over and over. And then later in the half of the series, Ai admits that she placed her perceptions all on him without doing much actual engaging with him. She just perceived a lot of stuff out of context, and then they clear it up. So I guess going back to when you were saying about timing, was it maybe the best time to do it? No. But to be honest, in that situation, if I wouldn't have got better, there would have never been a best time. I think them doing that kind of catapulted Ai into maturing and understanding the situation. So I think you look at a difficult time and you address that difficult time. That's what they did. And as long as you have clear communication and understanding, it'll work out.
I feel like I understand what you're saying. I think that's a very mature way to go about it, and I feel like that's entirely hinged upon the child that you're dealing with. And maybe her mom knew that I could handle it, and like that's a different story, I suppose. I feel like that could have ended in a very, very bad way as well.
It could have, but it didn't. My thing is like, what is she gonna do? Wait till Ai moves out and then hide it from her?
No, of course.
Or tell her one day,
not.
she's like, hey, you're not gonna like this, but I'm dating your teacher.
Surprise, motherfucker.
As an adult, because I didn't probably get the chance to grow and address that situation because they avoided it, she's gonna be like, wow, fuck you.
Motherfucker.
Right? You know what I mean? So I guess that's how I feel about it.
Yeah, bet you could grow from there too. You know, like in the beginning, it was kind of like that.
I just feel like the likelihood of it, them tackling it there, force her to mature. I've been in that situation. My parent has never dated a teacher, but I've been in a situation where they were getting ready to date other people because they got a divorce, and I was vehemently against it in the same manner that she was. I kind of could see both sides of it. A fun fact, my father's wife is my mother's friend, and they were all friends, and my mother's husband is my father's friend. So I completely...
what? Your father's wife...
And they all worked together.
Mother's friend. All work. Wait, and then your father's new wife is your mother's friend?
Yes, and my father's new wife, who's my stepmother, asked my mother for permission to marry my father.
Oh, that's actually really sweet.
So
that's a good story.
I can completely understand that situation. Although it's not a teacher, like I completely get it. You know, I can see your perspective, but I guess I'm just explaining why I have a different perspective on it. And going back to really quickly when we were talking about sleuthing, and I was talking about flower language, I think for me that was a fun part of sleuthing because I think they had a wisteria flower, and I was like, well, I don't know that one, so I had to look that one up. I find that's gonna go over a lot of people's head. I think this happens with so many films where they're like, oh, this didn't make sense, but they didn't even understand that it did make sense because they didn't know what the imagery represented. And I think that's a common thing. And people might get upset, like, well, I shouldn't have to do all of that. Everybody's got a different opinion. There are many ways to communicate other than words. And I think that most people, when they watch media, they just want words.
Yeah, or action, really realistically.
Yeah, so I enjoyed that subtext. I love that in all forms of stories. But I will say the sleuthing that I didn't like was I don't mind leaving things up to interpretation, kind of like Christopher Nolan occasionally does. But they just didn't finish stuff.
Yes, exactly. I was like, what even is this ending? What is this?
When I thought it was just supposed to be one season, I was like, that didn't end. But they want to do another season, right?
Here's my thing about that, though. There's no guarantee that it will get one. I can tell you right now that this was expensive. I can tell you right now that they had development issues. There's not a guarantee. And my issue with the animation industry is there's always a rush. They don't give people enough time to work on something. And then you have quality issues, whether it be narrative or visuals or whatever. And then if it does get a sequel, you'll get the sequel after the energy has died.
Right.
My biggest example, I love Made in Abyss. If you're not reading a manga and you're only watching the anime, you're probably pissed because Abyss came out forever ago and they're like, yeah, the sequel's on this way. The same thing happened with One Punch Man. These 4-year waits,
it's too long.
Kind of like kills the momentum.
Yeah, it does.
So I'm not saying that Wonder Egg is going to be the same, but it's very dangerous if you don't have a guarantee that something's going to be produced and you don't have the funding. If you already have everything in order and you're like, we're already working on it, like Final Fantasy VII Remake, then you're good to go. But if you're in a situation like Blade Runner 2049 and it didn't make the money that you thought it was, and you're like, oh, well, everything else after is done, I guess that's it. And it is some unanswered questions. You're judged on what you released, not what you planned on releasing, right?
Yeah, that's 100% accurate. Like you have to at least try to finish it to a certain degree. You can leave things a little open to interpretation, like you said, but you have to give the fans an ending that's at least acceptable if it doesn't continue. That's just fair. It feels like, nah, fuck it, I'm done. Like, it's fine.
I know they had issues, so I don't want to say, oh, it's all their fault, right?
It's not their fault.
I think it's a representation of the industry as a whole, but episode 12 was the ending. And then later on, they was like, oh yeah, we're going to do a special episode. And I'd be remiss if I didn't complain about the fact that the first 25 minutes of 46-minute special episode was a recap.
Yeah, unnecessary. We already had one. I was like, we already had a recap. It was a whole episode, actually. We didn't need two. We are intelligent. We can remember that this series is only a few episodes long to begin with, you guys. Like, this isn't a super long 300 episode series. Like, we don't need that much of a recap.
Based off those rumors, which I don't like to necessarily adhere to, I can understand that initial recap, but the recap for the special, what are we doing? And then the recap aired like 2 months after the series finished as well. I just think it had a troubled production.
It's such a good show otherwise.
It is. Whenever there's this type of disappointment, it's because you really enjoyed what you got and you expected more, or you expected it to finish well. This is not like a disappointment where you're like, oh, this just wasn't enjoyable throughout. It is a series that I enjoyed, and I'm definitely happy I watched it. And I think it did a lot of things that were amazing. My favorite of the characters was probably Momoe. She didn't get as much screen time as other girls. She came in a little later. But I say she's my favorite just because of the narrative that she had. Her personal arc is something that I thought was very forward-thinking.
Yeah, I thought they did a good job at that.
This series did a phenomenal job representing depression. The bouts that I have, not I, but I, Otto.
the main character, Oto Ai.
Yeah, I realized I was like, oh no. The belts that Oto have are very realistic, how they come in waves, and it's not always like the stereotypical thing, but then you have more severe forms where you're dealing with cutting as well with Rika.
Right.
And they use this via color as well. The colors also are very representative of the somber moods a lot of the time. Like they have blue, which is like a melancholy feeling in scenes, and they have blue, which is like a feeling of sadness and longing. And so I think they did so many things in an expert manner. It's a shame that they didn't have the time, or maybe they didn't utilize the time. I like to think they didn't have the time to fully give the narrative that nice bow at the end.
Okay, who's your favorite character?
Ooh, my favorite character. See, that's hard, and it probably is hard partially because I liked Momoe, and I don't know now because obviously my instinct would be, oh, I can't just choose the same character. But you know what impresses me is that usually in series I don't like the main character because the main character tends to be the most boring of the characters. But I liked watching Ai. I think seeing how she reacted to everything and seeing how she reacted to her friends made her such a better main character, more interesting main character than I'm used to seeing. So I'm impressed with that. I'll choose her.
If Kip hadn't said Momoe, were you going to pick her?
Possibly.
I
like them
you
both.
was. You
Possibly,
literally
maybe.
finished your statement when you picked I with, so I guess I'll go choose her.
Second choice.
Because
that's okay. You
it's
can
easy.
have a second choice.
I like her because I want to say she seems like the strongest one.
Yeah, she does actually.
Physically or just mentally?
Mentally. I mean, yeah, mentally.
I disagree.
Why?
Definitely Nadu.
Oh, yeah. No, well, see, okay. So Nadu is, maybe I'm going to seem ridiculous saying this. Is she an android?
She is, yes.
Okay. It's like when you
Spoiler
said.
alert times a million.
There's no need to say spoiler alert.
I know, I'm just kidding.
Oh, okay.
I know, but it was funny. Now it's not.
I ruined your joke.
Ruined it.
And now it's funny again. See, you did it.
Is nobody gonna ask me my favorite character?
Well, yeah. What's your favorite
Wait.
character?
Yes, we will. Oh, no, you go now. Well, who's your favorite character? But I want to come back.
You go now. You can go, I guess.
Oh, you go now.
Her favorite character
now.
is Sawaki, the teacher.
No, of course it's not. Absolutely not.
I just wanted to hear disgust in your voice.
Oh, no, that dude is
I
creepy. I
believed
don't
him
care.
for a
He is
second. I was like,
creepy.
oh.
I want to talk about Sawaki later on, but who is your
We
favorite
will.
character?
Okay.
Oh, thank you. We will. But who's your favorite character?
Really, I loved like from the moment she entered. I don't.
What?
It's hard to describe why, but like I'm gonna try. Kotobuko Owano, the scientist with the girl with the blonde and pink hair. She's the albino one.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
I liked her.
That died because she was so passionate about going into like studying the other world, like of death. I'm like, man, that is dedication to one's craft. That is
Really?
admirable as hell. I loved it. I loved it so much. Just like
Okay,
she was kind of crazy, which was also really fun. Just really curious. I loved her curiosity and her passion.
I liked her character too. I could totally see why you loved her character.
I don't know how to feel about that.
What, am I bad?
I can see why you liked her.
No, I thought she was interesting. I thought,
Weirdo.
Shut up. I don't even want to explain myself anymore. I had feelings and you heard them.
okay.
Go ahead, Chris.
I think that you would like her, and I'm going to tell you why. No, I'm going to let you wonder why I think that you would like her.
Wait, what? I'm so confused. I don't know if
That's what
you...
Mad Cat was talking about earlier.
Wait,
Whoa, me?
Remember? When
No.
you were making recommendations and like you were wondering like why it was recommended to you, like what your
Oh,
friend
yes,
thinks about you.
Now I'm back on track.
That's why. So I was thinking, I just kept see that I like her. Only to be funny.
Yes,
Once
yes.
again, he ruined my joke. Once again. Once again.
Bro, I kid
I
you
didn't
not.
realize there was a
This-
joke, but and at the risk of
I'm so confused, bro.
Anyway,
Sorry, you go.
I liked her because she's a mad scientist and her
Okay.
curiosity and passion was palpable, and she had
Curiosity
really
and
cool
passion.
hair.
I just think you like pretty... Okay, go ahead, Kat.
Okay, no. I'm glad that you got that half a sentence out because I was just about to say I'm about to maybe sound like I'm simplifying things too much, but after you saying that, I don't feel so bad. So what I was getting was that they would go into these dreams, right? And there would be someone who was hurt by something, traumatized by something, specifically Thanatos, because they all killed themselves, right? And so it's like, oh, these are the different, like each character, each victim is like a representation of the types of things that people kill themselves for and what you should look out for is what I was looking at it as. I was definitely reading my little baby's first anti-suicide propaganda, right? And when I saw Kotobuki, I thought that was like, oh, some people have that dedication to their job, or they have this wanderlust, or even nihilism, because she was like, she just didn't care about her body as much as what she was taking in or what she was looking at, what she wanted to. Because yes, she's a scientist, but she like. It seems like she goes to sleep for a living, which is not the same.
Like that? I mean, yeah, she's not the same. But...
It seemed very similar to me as someone who, like, they're so interested in, you know, this MMO or this anime or this book that they're reading that they just can't be, like, they're gonna forget the rest of their life. Like, I read the books and everything else falls away. Right?
Mm-hmm.
And in their life. I felt like that was the cautionary tale of Kotobuki, just like all these others. Like, she gave up her life too, just like all these others did. It was just in a different way. And so I thought the show was telling you, like, be careful of this. This is bad.
That's a really good point, actually. You're rolling out the really good points this episode, MadKat.
Yeah, when I saw her, Kotobuki very much to me reminded me of Rick Sanchez, right?
Who the hell is Rick Sanchez? Not to be disrespectful.
From Rick and Morty.
Rick and Morty, right?
Yeah.
But I don't know. All I know is like the Pickle Rick joke, but other than that, I never watched Rick and Morty.
Yeah, no, he,
well, you know,
like that is his life, you know, like science is his life. Like, he doesn't care about anything else, clearly.
Well, science is just what he's good at. But to me, the crux of Rick's character is that he's seen so many other dimensions. He knows that multi-dimensional theory is real, and everything that is possibly could be happening is always happening at all times. Everything good he could imagine, everything bad he can imagine, you know, everything. So he just doesn't care about it anymore. He has no empathy for anyone's human life or anything. That's the kind of thing that could make people go like, oh, I could go to work today, or I could just jump off this cliff. It doesn't matter.
Like, I can see that like a college disillusionment.
Go ahead. I know you stopped because I kept saying I.
No, you go I. I want to get feedback.
I got a straight donkey expression on my face because I was confused again. No, I thought it was interesting when you said cautionary tale. I thought the reason why you found it to be cautionary tale interesting compared to mine. You said it was cautionary because it's like, hey, being this invested in what you're doing in disillusion, this can be the result. Was that your take on the cautionary tale?
Yes.
Mine, per se, was I don't think she's at fault. How you view death and how you view the afterlife or whatever is how you view it, and that's totally fine. Her views were totally fine to me. I know that may sound crazy as hell to some people.
No, she's right. She's right. Just like Rick is right, but Rick's a terrible person.
She's not.
I had no issue with her view. What I found the cautionary tale was whatever you decide is not only going to impact you, it's going to impact those around you. When Nadu was like, you left me, she broke down crying and was like, you left me to deal with everything. And she was like, it's not that big of a deal. It's like, well, maybe it's not to you, but it is to those around you. That's all I wanted to say.
Yeah.
Which is always how, I mean, not always, I don't want to say always, but how suicide works, right?
Yes, you are 100% correct. I honestly think that this is a two-way street because, like, everyone's like, oh, how could you do this? How could you leave me, you know, to deal with all this pain and stuff? But it's also a two-way street. Like, you can't force someone to live life. Life is hard, you know, and, like, simultaneously, like, you needing them to be alive might be causing them a lot more pain. And, like, you shouldn't project that on to your friend or whoever. You can help it. And it is a choice. Living is definitely still a choice. I actually really appreciate that this show deals with a lot of dark themes. I mean, just remembering Miwa in an episode when, you know, we were talking about, you know, molesters on the train earlier, and this is, like, obviously takes it way deeper, and definitely was the darkest situation that I've ever seen in anime. And I'm like, wow, this needs to be dealt with. This is a problem in every society. Like, this like predatory nature of young girls. Like, it's not okay. It has to stop.
It wasn't handled poorly.
Yeah.
I find it ironic that the medium the show is in is one of the same mediums that kind of sexualize minors.
Yeah, it kind of like propagates that whole idea. Yeah, it's a problem.
I think it's very fitting. Like, it wouldn't mean as much.
I mean, yeah, maybe it's
this.
fitting. Maybe. I'm not going to say that.
Right.
Oh, now what?
Self-censored. That's fine by me.
No, I don't like that.
Oh, shut up. So
I want to know now. Now it's interesting.
I was like, okay, you can cut this later, Kev. I was going to say, I'm like, maybe they'll reach the exact audience that they meant to reach, who's watching anime, that demographic.
No, that's a good point.
No, I'm not going to cut that. And I will tell you so you won't have to wonder. No, they're not. The people that are going to understand understood before, and the people that won't, they will not.
Like, well, love doesn't have an age limit. No, it does. It does.
People out here saying 7-year-old anime characters is their waifu, they're still going to be saying that. Anyways, I will say...
I know. Like, we need to get rid of some things in, modern civilized society. Like, there will never be a situation. It doesn't matter the person. It doesn't matter. Like, no, you don't mess with children. You don't.
Going back to Kotobuki really quickly, I find it interesting that her death and how she discarded her body in the same way that Aka and Uruaka did, when it was like, it's not that big of a deal. There's something after it, right?
Yeah.
I think it's fair to say that we are not entirely upset with Kotobuki for her decision. While it can be seen as selfish, I'm not entirely upset with her. When vice versa, Shino, who committed suicide because she followed this occultist leader, she used to cut herself just like Rika, and he kind of gained this person's trust and abused it, told her that there's life after this, all your possessions and stuff, you don't need them, give them to me or whatever. So he definitely manipulated
people
her.
want to believe there's a life after it, and
but the thing is, there was a life after that.
Wasn't good. Wasn't a good one.
But for her, she was pretty much happy. It was a disillusioned happiness, but it was a happiness, right? And
Something
I find it
extra
interesting.
creepy about disillusioned happiness.
Disillusioned happiness is not good. We shouldn't be striving for that.
No, I'm not saying that we should strive for it. I just found it interesting that other people can perceive Kotobuki's happiness or thirst for knowledge as a detachment from reality and somebody that's too far gone. You can make that argument for Kotobuki, right? So I just find the parallels that they have interesting because essentially they both kind of did the same thing. It's just they had different reasons for doing it.
If you're in the universe and you commit suicide, you're going to go to this dream dimension, right? Which is actually very similar to a lot of versions, like film versions of hell, where you just relive. Basically, you're trapped with the bad things you had in your life. Do you think what do you think happens if you just die regularly in this universe?
What?
If you die, like if you don't commit suicide,
where do you go instead of this dream world?
Yeah, are you going to go to the dream dimension, but you just won't have a bad guy, or what?
I think you don't go there at all. I think this is an entirely different.
You just
dimension.
fade away if you don't kill yourself.
I think you go. Well, if you don't kill yourself, you go to whatever your afterlife idea is.
Go to another anime.
Well, you could end up in Steins Gate.
You could, and then nobody will watch you.
I'll be like, well, fuck. Let me get my tormentor. I don't want to go there.
We're not going back there. Oh God.
You're saying this within the context of the anime, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
I don't think that they established it, and I think that there were many statements that kind of like but flirted with the argument of this is all a science experiment. They were monitoring her dreams. They wanted to discover why girls commit suicide. They knew Frill, the daughter that they created for themselves, went rogue. So that's what I mean by like
So
these
at
metaphorical
the end,
loose ends where I was like, it was a little too many. Go ahead.
Right. No, definitely. But I mean, it's episodic. That's how I feel like it's going to tend to be. But so Frill, they said, oh, we lied to the girls so that we could get them, on board with this, because they weren't ready for the truth. Our fault, and we created Frill. And
what are you referring to?
Yeah, you've been doing auto-tune this whole chat, so go ahead.
No,
repeat it.
The two guys, so the Akas, right?
Aka and Uda Aka.
Yeah, they mention at the end, they're like, hey, we lied to the girls. We didn't tell them all the truth. It was all our fault. We created Frill, and now Frill is making little girls kill themselves and then sucking them into this
Hold on, we can't
dream
gloss over the situation with them creating Frill and who Frill is.
Allegedly.
Do you want to explain that?
Wait, what is alleged? What did I say that was alleged?
She is the cause for killing.
Oh, okay. Well, that's what they said.
The uptick in young girl suicide.
And they said it like obviously they can be unreliable narrators, right? They'll take Ai into a little creepy dark room and tell her whatever story they want to tell her. But this is something that they said to each other while they supposedly didn't think anybody else was listening. So
it's something that they were investigating. That's why I said allegedly. Like they have a hunch. They don't have proof.
So, what do we think about this situation with the creation? Like, these two scientists made a girl, and what they said was very, very interesting. And I saved it somewhere, and I can't find it now. But like when they were creating her, do you remember what they said specifically? Like when they were like thinking about the elements, like how she could be perfect. Like they made her the age.
Yeah, they said they wanted to make a girl that any good father would love.
Yeah, like without the complications of like womanhood, like right before. Like when like they're innocent and stuff, and I'm like, this is extremely offensive.
No, well, they said like, I don't want to quote Britney Spears. She has a song, no longer a girl, not yet a woman, right? I don't remember what.
Right, yeah. Like, where is this going?
I don't remember their exact words, but it was basically that, where they
I don't
wanted
even
to
know
get
that
in
song.
between.
Do you know that song? I have to know that song. It was
It
famous.
was very, because she made a movie, and that
Gosh,
was like,
did you really see that movie?
yes, Crossroads.
Saw Crossroads?
He saw Crossroads a lot.
Wow!
And Coyote Ugly. Those are his favorite movies. So
Oh my gosh, I loved Coyote Ugly.
if you ever want recommendations for MadKatMelody,
I do. Now I do.
Well,
Now,
I don't even know what to
yeah.
say. Anyway, what I'm saying is, they didn't. I don't think they were trying to
Sisterhood
sidestep.
of the Traveling Pants. Another. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Hey, I also love that movie, so you can recommend me movies anytime, MadKat, anytime.
I'm purposefully being like stereotypically ignorant. Go ahead,
But
MadKat.
what I was saying was, I don't think they were trying to avoid the complications of womanhood. In fact, if they wanted to, they could have, but they purposely put in flaws because I think they wanted to get adolescent complications and like to have a more layered and deep and hard to deal with at times daughter.
I mean, they said that, right?
Yeah.
They were like, we want a daughter that any father can love, right? So based off that, they want to be like these fatherly figures to this young girl. That connection may be a little different if you create a grown-ass woman in her mid-30s. And both of y'all is like, I'm your daddy. Your daddy is.
Yeah, it had to be a girl. It had to be a child.
And the teacher that Star thinks is a creeper, he spoke about young love and how it's pure and innocent. And he was like, there's no self-interest like it is with adulthood. I think they wanted that with Frill because they were lonely. They had each other, but they were confined to this space by this company and constantly monitored.
Yeah.
They told themselves they were doing it because they were bored, but I think they had a longing that, they needed to satiate.
Mm-hmm.
And they gave her flaws. They even said when they gave her flaws, they're like, no, she needs to be stubborn at times and selfish at times because this is what makes her human.
Well, at first, when they said, oh, any father would love, and they were listing off the traits, I was like, okay, that one makes sense. That one makes sense. And then they got to selfish, and I was like, oh. But then I thought, oh, if you make someone, that's just as bad. If you leave out something like selfishness, then they might turn to, like, it might be bad for them because they're not going to have a sense of self-preservation. So that could have been bad. So I was like, when they said any father could love, I thought they were saying like, oh, if you take out selfishness, if you don't put that in, then it's like you're just creating a servant. And that's not like a good father would want their daughters to fight for themselves.
You want them to love you, but you want them to have their own identity.
Right. So when I first heard selfishness, I thought, oh, that's the chemical X, right? But then I thought, at first I thought it was a flaw, but then I realized like, oh, they might have put that in there to make her in hopes of making her better because that's something you need, as opposed to like, oh, that's the thing that messed you up. You shouldn't have done that. It could have been the kind of thing where like it would have been even more messed up maybe if you didn't do that.
Yeah. Things changed when Azusa, their love interest, came into the picture. And obviously she chose one over the other. And they just didn't account for the fact that this AI that they created to be human, she needed an upbringing. Like they devoted time to her until they were like, okay, we met this other woman. Now we're captivated with her. And it's like, well, you just forgot this other person. As evil as Frill is, I don't think she just naturally was always like that.
So
I think, she needed help and like they just basically just ignored the signs that she needed help.
Yeah, and he even said it, right? He's like, that should have been a cue right there, but I just didn't pick up on it. I'm gonna paraphrase this, but she was like, you can tell somebody's like psychological state based off who they hate. Does the woman hate her husband because he cheated on her? Or does she hate the woman because she feels like she tricked her husband? She just asked him this question out of the blue, and she was asking in relation to the other Akka. Azusa didn't choose him, and he was like, I give them both my blessings. But you could tell he had resentment, which he later admitted to Himari, the girl that Azusa...
The real daughter.
Yeah.
So what do you think would have helped to not make her so evil?
She needed friends.
She was a lab rat.
Yeah, she needed friends. She needed proper understanding of how to properly deal with emotions. She needed a motherly figure. It wasn't forced upon her and taking away somebody.
When you say properly deal with emotions, you're saying because they were too in their work, they didn't actually teach her how to respond to things emotionally.
Yeah, I think they just ignored maybe how strong her emotions were or her reactions, like that they weren't quite normal, and they didn't really address that probably.
One
Yeah,
of them
it's
didn't
fine.
because he was captivated by the other woman, and the other one was so frustrated and had so much disdain because he didn't get picked that he
Right.
wasn't fully focused. And he even said once she went off the deep end, he was too focused on his wife being pregnant, and I was too focused on my research, and we just did not pay attention to her. I think one of their issues as well was that I find that when people increase their intelligence to like the degree that those guys did, depending on how involved they are with other subjects of the world, their moral compass may start to kind of slip. I'll give a good example. Elon Musk, somebody asked him, they was like, well, people might die on this trip to Mars, right? And he chuckled. He was like, yeah, that's going to happen. But it was like,
Like, well, it can't be helped.
I know he has a condition, so it's a little different from him. So maybe I should choose a different example. But yeah, he
Is
does.
it?
I can't remember, which is why I just used a generic word. But I want to say Asperger's.
I really didn't know that.
Yeah, so maybe I just should have chose somebody else. But sometimes people that are highly intelligent, their moral compass starts to slip a little bit depending on their involvement with other subjects. And I think that was the issue there. Is you have these two guys that are highly intelligent. They create this thing, but when you sit back and you look at not your intelligence, you don't analyze your intelligence. You analyze your moral compass, and you think, if we are miserable in this situation because we can't go anywhere and we're confined to this room and this company always monitors us, why would we bring somebody else into that, especially someone that's not an adult
Right.
and that's not mentally equipped to handle it? And knowing that we can't provide for this young girl how she probably needs us to because we're not being provided for, our mental state is not good as well. So it was just, you know, the old phrase like hurt people hurt people.
Yeah.
Yes.
The whole situation was just trauma bond.
Yeah, this is I thought like kind of a really good example of people who shouldn't have children. Like, hey, you know, don't bring another person into this world if you haven't dealt with your own issues and your environment does not call for it.
They got a girl killed because of their selfishness. Himari didn't have to die.
Oh, neither did the wife.
Oh yeah.
I mean, neither did Frill. I mean, she didn't really die, I guess, but you know, she didn't have to be tortured.
You remember the Bride of Chucky where she like put the TV or whatever
Boy.
in the tub? Do anybody remember that? No? Just me? Okay.
But it also very much seems like
Boy, shut that ass up.
I was like, he doesn't even care. What a badass. He's gonna keep going.
I will say it. So we had words. The bot that I use for recording on Discord frequently has drops. So we had a drop in the conversation. Now we are resuming it. I left off rambling about my disdain that no one shared my excitement for recalling the Bride of Chucky. So we're just gonna leave that there and continue talking about Wonder Egg. Mad Cat, you were speaking about something. Can you fill the audience in on what you were talking about?
Nope.
Mad Cat, are you with us?
I'm back.
Okay, live with MadKatMelody.
So what I was talking about was originally when I saw there was a scene where I was hiding in a closet and she was supposed to take a recording with her phone of her friend being abused. Originally, I thought that was her supposed to be taking a recording of Koito being abused by Sawaki, but I went back previous to that scene. Koito was like getting her clothes out of the trash or something because the kids had taken her clothes. And so then I was like, okay, maybe that was her supposed to be recording kids abusing her versus a teacher. Otherwise, it looked kind of strange because she was like, you couldn't see much through the slits of the closet, but you could see that her clothes were coming off. And so I was like, oh, that's pretty damning. That would have been pretty damning evidence. And then Koito, when I comes out of the closet, and I was like, I'm sorry, I didn't get it. And Koito is like, oh, that's okay. I would have been like, no, that's not okay. Like, you should have, like, it was strange to me how calm she was. And then later I thought, when I thought it was Sawaki that she was supposed to get the recording of, I thought like, oh, is that because I said she couldn't get the recording because she didn't want to like attack Sawaki because she had a conflict of interest. I was going over in my head of circles. You know, like I got lost there for a second.
I'm super deep into this.
Because it was such a quick thing. It's quick. The way it was shot was very.
Bam wham, thank you, ma'am.
Yeah, they showed you the scene, and it's like now they're on to the next thing.
Yeah, okay.
And then, and it further, I went down even deeper into this rabbit hole because later she goes and she rescues herself in the dream dimension from Sawaki, right?
Mhm.
And so it made perfect sense to me that, oh, Sawaki is this abuser guy because clearly, in this other dimension, he's the same guy. He's just abusing I instead of Koito,
Yeah, you know what? On that note, really quick, I just feel like did that scene mess it up even more for you? Like, I mean, obviously, Kit feels differently, but like, he was already kind of creepy. I can't come back from that. Like, he's already been established to be in the same category as the other like actual like monsters. So like, I can't. He can't come back from that. I'm sorry. Like,
well, when you were saying that, when you guys were talking about how like, no, he's not a bad guy. But clearly in this dream he was a bad guy. I was like, oh, okay, so does that mean he was a bad guy in this other dimension? Or does that mean that someone can be a bad guy, kind of like we were talking about the Sino evils, like someone who just doesn't do the right thing is doing a bad thing? Can he be a bad guy because of her projections of what he does or doesn't do, and that can hurt her? And is that what they were saying in that?
Right, because like it's an inconsistent plot, right? There's a word for this.
Yeah, earlier I was saying the inconsistency made it fresh because each dream they added something that made it new.
Right, but like everything else before has been like, oh, this is an actual monster, an abuser, whatever, and
Or
we
we
defeat
were
them.
assuming
So
they
like
were.
now, like I can see how they were trying to shock us with that, but at the same time, like he's tarnished in my mind even further now, and like I just can't come back from that. Like it's too creepy.
What do you think, Kip?
What? I'm like super confused. I'm not even gonna lie.
He appeared in the dream dimension
He became
as
a
one of the.
monster, just like one of the other abusers. But like you're like we're supposed to believe he's actually a good guy, but he's showing up in her dream world as a monster, just like every other terrible person that we've seen it to this point. Why would he be the only exception that would not be an actual monster in real life?
Because she likes him is what the answer when I was that I was assuming. But go on.
What am I accent? What?
Or excellent podcast.
I feel like I asked, what are you requesting my thoughts on? And I feel like you guys just, maybe I'm just stupid. It probably is that.
You're
You'll
definitely
listen
not.
back and you'll hear it.
You're clearly not.
I don't
So
think.
I want to know what your take is on like seeing the teacher as a monster and then going back from that being like, oh, but he's actually not a monster, he's a nice guy. Like for me that tarnished his image further. Did it matter to you? And if it did, why?
What? No, I'm joking.
Hope you're done.
So I think you had, I don't want to say a heuristic bias. I think you had a bias towards him from the get-go. And I think that the series kind of played with the idea how like, oh, this person did this to all these people. This person's evil because these people said they did this and we believe these people. But you're innocent until proven guilty by the law, right? But by the public opinion, you can be persecuted before any evidence is given. And I think it kind of played on that where throughout the entire series, you had Momoe saying he is not this person. He is not this person. He is my uncle. He's a loving person.
No uncle ever is not creepy.
I feel like most people know when they family member creepy as far as uncle goes or aunt, but she was saying this is not the case. Like he's a good person. You guys are misreading him, right? Oftentimes, speaking about America, here's an example from my job. I was in charge of watching a young girl. She's a very bright young girl, talked about everything she did every day.
I feel like
it
we
was a
need more
good
context
conversation.
for this. Like, why are you in charge of watching a young girl? What context is this?
I used to be a flight attendant. So when
There
you
you
have
go.
an unaccompanied minor, there's a flight attendant that's designated to be responsible for the unaccompanied minor's safety. We all are, but one person is like, no, you pretty much gotta hang out with this person for the whole flight.
You're the babysitter.
And they picked me to do it because they didn't want to do it.
I would love that. I would love doing
I
that.
would love you on the flight.
I was talking to this kid and she's a bright kid. I let her play my Nintendo Switch because I was like, I feel like she's getting antsy and I need something to like entertain her. So she's playing my Nintendo Switch and I realized that she wouldn't let me leave. She still wanted to talk. So we were talking and I remember there was a point where she had to go to the restroom. She needed help. And I was like, oh, pimp, I can't help you. And she could not understand why.
How old was she?
Maybe like whatever was the youngest age to be an unaccompanied minor, she had to be that.
Okay.
I don't quite remember. She was fairly young.
Like 5, I think. Isn't that the youngest?
She was young, bro. It's like she was about as tall as my kneecap. So I was like, yeah, I can't help you. And I was the only guy flight attendant and all the other girls outside. Just get one of the girls. But she didn't feel comfortable because she didn't know the girls. She hadn't been talking with them for 2 hours.
Mm.
And I was like, I can't help you. I can't help you. I can't help you. And she just couldn't understand. And I couldn't explain to her why.
Yeah.
I have zero ill intentions, and I can't explain that. The fact that I know I have zero ill intentions, the fact that my coworkers know I have zero ill intentions, none of that matters.
No.
Vice versa. I remember being in Japan walking around with my friends' daughters. It's 11 p.m. If that happened in America, they would be like, this dude's a creeper.
100%.
And just to be clear, I believe that same thought process can occur in Japan and the rest of the world. However, I can't shake the feeling that such a critical judgment supported by zero evidence is more likely to occur frequently stateside.
Yeah.
All we were doing was walking to a konbini because the girls wanted to buy snacks to eat while watching YouTube at home. So walking back, laughing and talking, I remember two women observing us and smiling, saying that's cute. Because to them, I think what they saw was an innocent moment where I was being an older brother type figure to these girls, which in my opinion is rarely the thought process that occurs in that scenario.
Yeah.
Nobody thought I was like this R. Kelly motherfucker that's out here going after girls being a predator.
Right. Well, I mean, you don't give up the energy either.
But here's my thing is that to you I don't because you know me. But if you didn't know me, then maybe I would, right?
Okay, thank you for saying that.
The fact of the matter is that pedophiles exist, but not every guy is a pedophile. And I know for a fact that there are people that believe it to be very strange if a guy is hanging out with a young girl that's not his daughter.
Yeah, no, it's 100% weird usually.
I've had issues where I used to work at a pizza shop and a guy would be taking care of his daughter and her friends for the day. And other customers would be like, why is he with them? Based off his race or whatever. Like I remember one time this Asian dude came in and he had his daughter and 3 white girls and people was just like, why they get him to do? That's weird. You know, he might be doing something. It's like you're automatically being persecuted based off your gender or your ethnicity. And when I think about her teacher, maybe it's not as deep as that, but I think that they played with that in the narrative where you have these girls that are like, no, maybe he is, because I had an excuse. I saw an embrace and she saw it out of context. So she had an excuse for her judgment. The other girls had preconceived notions based off I's secondhand misjudged event. Momoe, who was his direct relative, was like, he's not like that. You guys got it wrong. But nobody cared to listen to her because at the end of the day, he was who they perceived him to be, regardless of what Momoe said. At the very end, you have the evil version of him in her dream. She's like, you are not my real teacher. My real teacher is a good person. And I was angry and I was jealous and I saw something out of context. You're not the real him. You're my perceived villainy of him. And then at the end, you get what actually happened with him and Nagase. And you hear that, no, she kind of did this at her old school. She pushed herself upon him. He kind of got startled and I saw the moment that looked like they were embracing when it was really Nagase being out of order. And at the end, he gives a narration and he's like, she wanted me to come to this room with her or whatever, and I didn't want to do it. And so she stood on the roof and was yelling all of these lies like, oh, he raped me. And then she slipped and fell. That completely changed Nagase's character from being this loving person and this person that cared about I. And they even say in the series, they drop hints at it with the flower language. I can't remember the specific flower by her, but it like represents like a loyalty that's a certain type of loyalty. It's not a pure loyalty. It's like a loyalty out of self-interest. It's when she dies and it shows her feet.
And that was one of the creepiest moments I've ever seen in anime. That was so just very real.
But that's because you be watching Madoka Magica and stuff.
Well, first of all, Madoka Magica has some moments.
Oh, here we go. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Okay. Some other people have made some comparisons to Madoka Magica in this series, and I can see why, because there is a lot of depth in this series, as there is in Madoka Magica. And might I add, what was that? What was that, Kip?
You know, I've never watched Madoka Magica. I just like
I know, and you always mess with me about it. I'll have you know that your Darling in the Front, was also compared to this quite a few times.
Hey, well, you said my Darling in the Front. I want to say Darling in the Front was good up until a point.
That's one of the things that was mentioned by someone that I also read about. That's sad. I hate when they do that to series. And just like that, and I guess just like this, Wonder Egg Priority could have been better. It was done a disservice, but it's still worth watching, I think.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I enjoyed it. I'll say that. But I think Sawaki's whole storyline was like playing with that motive. Don't get me wrong, women got to deal with a whole bunch of crap that men don't have to deal with. But this was the one male character in the story that had these dual narratives where he was kind of persecuted when he never had any ill interest at all. You see Ai's perceptions. Her mother never saw him as creepy. He just was a kind guy. But I remember you said in the beginning, he was just a little weird. He's like a little too kind. And I'm like, well, why is that? Clearly, I think that's a bias that not all women have, but a lot of women have because of how society pushes that and because of incidents in society.
Yes.
So it's just like those perceived things that confirm our confirmation bias about an individual before we have actual evidence. So I think they were playing with that. That's my long ass explanation. Hopefully I answered your question.
That was beautiful.
Yes, thank you. It was very well done.
I don't know about all that.
I just realized a couple things. One, there aren't a lot of male characters in this show.
Mm-mm.
Yeah.
And I was going to say Sawaki is the only main character, male character, largely because I was being a little prejudiced myself because the Akkas become like, I mean, I guess they have human brains, but I was relegating them to like robot status. And I feel bad that I was like, oh, well, they're not people, right? And I feel bad that I did that because that's a similar thing I did with Nehru, right? Where we were talking about people being strong.
Yeah.
But I was in my head, I was like, well, she's a robot. That doesn't count, right?
I don't think you're evil for saying that.
I didn't say. I said prejudice. I didn't say evil.
Prejudice is evil.
Well, I mean, I guess that would have to be, like, is it,
This is going into Ghost in the
does
Shell
AI have an
territory.
advantage? Right,
This
so,
is going
like,
to what?
Ghost in the Shell territory.
Oh,
yes, and I think that's an important part that people should realize about this show, that, if you liked Ghost in the Shell, if you like science fiction, if you like thinking about all that kind of stuff, like, this is a show that you can also watch. Also,
Hell
no,
no.
I don't think
Hell
so.
no.
I disagree.
Firmly disagree. You're wrong, Stardust.
Do not
Maybe
watch this show
also-
for the science fiction. But
conceptually
But go on.
speaking, not like
You keep
not
saying
that
what you're
it's
gonna
that kind
say.
of show, but like conceptually, like there's a few underlying themes of it.
you finish what you were going to say, and then I'll.
Yeah, instead of interrupting you,
Yeah,
like
sorry.
I always do.
I just felt like I had to say no, and you said no.
Yeah, I said like I always do.
Okay, it's not.
What?
Not the bad
So
guy. You
what
go
if
on,
you if you had
Stardust.
time? Shut up, boy.
Just cut him off. He's still talking, but just cut him off.
What anime would you contribute this to? Where if you've seen this anime, you would definitely like this. Would it still be Ghost in the Shell or no?
Oh no, of course not. I just mean that like there's some themes in there. Like I'm not gonna
No, I
it's a science fiction anime. Like it's not.
It's
I'm glad because I didn't want to watch a science fiction anime.
I think there are some elements of science fiction within it, but it's not the
Oh
primary.
yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like
Why
I
didn't-
didn't mean that it was primary.
why didn't you want to watch a science fiction anime?
Probably because you fucking watched Escape.
Well,
Yeah,
that's
like,
what
like,
that's
we
the
kinda
first thing
crash
that
and
came to
burn
my
with
head.
that one.
But that was not a very hard science fiction show, though.
Oh, I know, and they can be good. It
Ghost
just
in
it
the Shell
depends.
is a hard
But
sci-fi, right?
Yeah, like I don't usually watch hard sci-fi. Like I'm much more slice of life, magical girl,
Okay. Yeah, this is magic.
psychological drama type of person. You know who might like this? If you like, oh god, it's an older anime, but it's definitely everyone knows what it is.
Science Gate.
Oh, stop! Stop! Oh, Elfen Lied. If you liked Elfen Lied, you would like this show.
Funny, I never saw Elfen Lead. I always wanted.
Is it lead?
I
I never know.
I cannot tell you. I always say lead.
Yeah, he
but
was just doing his thing. You say it how you say it.
I want to say that it's Elfen Lied. I just
I've only heard
it's spelled like
people
lies, so
say
I'm not even
Elfin
sure.
lied.
It might be lied. I don't know. Either way, I'm still gonna say lead, even if I'm proven to be wrong.
Oh, why? Why is that? Why are you so?
Because Elfin Lead sounds better. When I think of Elfin Lied, I just think of like my friend's uncle pronouncing shit wrong.
No, I 100% agree with you, and I hope it is lead as well. Yeah, I think if it's because it's psychological and there is a bit of gore to it, and there is a little bit of gore in here, but I don't think that's the main focus. It's primarily psychological.
How did you guys feel about the gore? Stardust, you go.
I don't think it was always gratuitous. I feel like sometimes the situation called for it, and other times, like the only one that bothered me that kind of like, I'm like, did we need to go that far? With the first killing of the magical pet. I was like,
The
that's a
magical
little-
what?
Wasn't it the lizard that died first?
Okay.
Magical.
Digimon.
You said pet. I thought you said the magical tit. I was like, what show are you watching?
Oh my god. That probably is an anime element.
There was that in this show, though.
Yeah, actually, now that you mention it. Oh my god, these monsters, I tell you.
I'll be completely honest. Well, first, I want to say, like, if you are a fan of Persona series, the video game series, this is pretty much Persona the anime, as far as your trauma being represented in a physical form in this parallel world. So if you enjoy Persona, maybe consider checking up on this, I guess. I felt at a point there were one too many scenes that were gratuitous for me.
Lore-wise,
Just the violence that the young characters suffered. Everybody's going to feel differently about it, but sometimes I feel like anime just enjoys seeing little girls get beat up.
No, they 100% do.
It was a couple scenes where I was like, what's the point of this? I understand like the point that these girls endure a lot. The hardest anime, I know you said there were a couple scenes that were hard for you to watch, and same with me, but I think the most difficult anime I had to watch was a film trilogy, a phenomenal book, Murdoch Scramble.
No, that one.
The things that happened to this young girl, you had to understand why she thought how she thought and why she was accepting of the things that happened to her. You had to understand because she had severe trauma, more than I've ever seen in anything I've ever watched or read. And the argument where it's like, well, if your husband's kicking your ass or your boyfriend's kicking your ass, just leave him. And I'm like, well, it's not that simple for that person. And before I didn't come to that conclusion. Before I was one of those people that I was like, just leave. Who enjoys getting their ass kicked? Just leave.
Yeah, it's very different if you're.
Yeah, but after like reading this, I was like, wow, what an uninformed opinion I had when I was younger.
Yeah, of course.
There were some scenes in here when I was like, this is no longer proving a point. This is just being ultra violent Mortal Kombat style. It wasn't a lot, but there were just a few scenes where I was like,
Okay, I was going to ask you if it was violence against like the victims in the dreams or against the heroes, because when I saw the action depicted with the heroes, I felt, like I said, the show plays with tropes in anime that we're used to seeing a lot before, and I felt like it was very like, this is what I would expect from like Dragon Ball Z type stuff. You know, like it didn't seem like you're saying like, oh, anime likes to depict, you know, little girls in danger and little girls getting hurt or whatever, and I don't disagree with that, but I don't. In terms of the action scenes, I think it was action. It was, you know, I didn't think it was that.
I wouldn't compare it to Dragon Ball Z just because Dragon Ball Z has a different animation style.
It does, but people want to see.
You want to see violence in Dragon Ball Z, right? But that violence doesn't have the impact that it does, in my opinion, in Wonder Egg Priority. Dragon Ball Z does not have the realism that this show has. I know that might sound crazy because all the elements that
it doesn't have the realism, but I didn't think it was like crazy over the top from what I've seen before.
When he skewered a magical pet and, you know, hand fed it to the owner that loved them. Man, I'm still scarred from that.
I do want to talk about, in terms of the violence against the monsters, the little comfort monsters. It was very.
Comfort monsters.
This is a funny term to use for them, but go ahead.
It was
I love it. I'm gonna keep it.
It was very like a lot, but I felt like it made sense when I was seeing it. I was like, oh, I mean, in fact, no. When I saw it, I was like, why did you even? If you guys knew this was gonna happen, why did you even give this to us? B, Frill and her little people, they killed the monsters. And so I was like, well, the two guys, they wouldn't, like, they're not working with Frill. So how premeditated was this? Like, did they know this was going to happen? And then you have to think, eventually, because I was confused for so long, eventually I was like, okay, what do the monsters symbolize then in terms of like life and trauma and getting over trauma?
The pets or the actual monsters?
Both. I mean, the pets are the monsters, right?
Well, I don't. The pets are.
Talking about the pets.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Oh, you're talking when you say monsters.
The comfort monsters. The
Yeah,
pets.
the comfort. Yeah, because the bosses, the killers
Magical
are different.
pets.
Is that what you were saying? Because monsters is like a vague term. I know. Sorry,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
the pets.
We're thinking like bad guys, but we're
Okay.
talking right now about the magical pets.
Okay, go ahead.
Right. What did they symbolize? What do you think they symbolize? Because I was thinking like love, right? Like you could. It seemed like the type of thing where it's like, oh, to be strong, you kind of have to have love in your life. Because if you're going over and
Yeah,
you're
like they wanted to maybe show them like, hey, you can rely on someone. Someone's here to help you. You need to trust. Maybe just trust something. Be vulnerable around something. Like it's gonna be okay. Like you can't win this on your own.
And also the kind of thing where once you have something to lose, you know, if your life is just terrible, if you're like Batman or the Punisher or something, and you feel like you have nothing left. I mean, Batman's a bad example, he's rich. But if you're like the Punisher, it's easy maybe to go out and be like, I'm just going to break the law and do all these bad things because I have nothing in my life. But once you have something, a love in your life, kind of like in the movie Kick-Ass, he's like, why doesn't everybody become vigilantes? And then when he gets a girlfriend, he's like, oh, this is why. Like, I'd rather be, you know, with someone rather than going and trying to beat people up. And so I felt like that's what they needed, a loss. They needed to be afraid of death. And that's why you had these monsters or pets. And that's why at the end you had to have them gruesomely die to show like the trauma that happens from them seeing this happen and them knowing like, oh, the more I get into all this bad stuff and like try to help people and go into dark parts of the world, the more I'm endangering what I love, right? And so if I have something I love, it's hard to do that. And I'm going to be afraid of death and I'm going to be afraid to help, you know, and that made it harder for them. And so showing how gruesome and how bad it was, I thought it made sense so that we could get in the mindset of them and how bad it is for them and how hard it is for them to come back. And so now it's no longer like we're going to play Power Rangers on the weekends and go save people who killed themselves. Now it's like, oh, I actually have something to lose.
Right, they have skin in the game now, and like they don't want to die. Bringing it, Mad Cat. You're bringing it today. I love it. I really agree with this.
I agree with you, and I think they even said it in the series where Momoe was the first freak out that we saw.
Yeah,
that was her first moment where she was like, "I'm not immortal. Death is possible for me, and I am scared."
Yeah, her fear was palpable, and like her just traumatization, and like I felt for her. In that moment, I was like, this is the most disturbing thing I've seen in a while.
She was like, I don't want to go back.
Yeah.
In the special, she was like, I don't want to do it. Like, we got our lesson.
I appreciated that.
And she had nothing but regret. She was like, I regret that I even got involved with this. It was kind of like, oh, be careful what you wish for was like a mini lesson in there, a very, very mini lesson in there, because these people came back, and it's like, the person's not going to come back being the person that you thought. It's not going to go back to how it was. You're not going to be able to make amends completely for what you did. And in some instances, like with Nagise, like you came to find that the person wasn't who you thought they were. It was just trauma bonding with deceptiveness.
Deception.
Yeah.
Deceit.
Deceitai. So, yeah, no, I do agree with you.
Well, I don't know.
Go ahead.
I mean, that was a justification as far as I saw it for the gore. As like a meta thing. Like, I get why they put it in the show. I get why the pets put in the show.
I understand the gore with the pets. I'm talking about the gore that was in, I could be totally wrong, but it was in the earlier half of the episodes. Like before the recap, it was just like a couple moments in one episode and then another episode. Overall, I don't think the series was terrible at it, but there were just moments where I was like, this is distasteful and it's not.
It didn't add to it.
Yeah.
So I feel like when I was explaining the gore for the pets, I was like, I get why the writers did this, right? But in the world, in terms of the Akkas, first of all, do you think they knew? I mean, they had to have known that Frill and her buddies would kill the pets, right? Is that true?
Probably. They probably did kind of anticipate, like, hey, like, let's see what happens. Like, the girls will probably stay alive longer. Let's see what Frill does if she can hurt,
But, okay, so then why did the butterfly head people, why were they okay killing the pets rather than the people?
Because they had orders not to from Frill.
Yeah. Each time they said, like, I'm not gonna kill you.
Yeah, Frill doesn't want that. Question is, why doesn't she want that, of course? Like, that's a big question.
Yeah, we don't know.
Well, the big question to me is, like, why would Frill want to kill the pets? Is it just because
probably
Frill's
because they were given by, her pseudo-fathers.
Well, because it does Frill doesn't hate them, does she?
I think Frill loves them in her twisted way, but she has to disdain because they don't share that love for her.
Because
she's acting out, like, for attention, I think.
Yeah, I don't think that they knew that Frill was going to do these things. I knew that they knew a glimmer of what Frill was capable of, but Frill had long surpassed their intellect and their understanding of her. So, I guess to answer your question, no, I personally don't think that they knew Frill would kill these animals. I just knew that they knew Frill would do something.
Yeah, I think they wanted to see what she would do.
Yeah.
Okay, so from a game standpoint, like if this was a game, Frill could be like the big boss at the end. And if she's playing, she doesn't want, like, these pets were definitely making these girls stronger, right? They were much more powerful with the pets than without. So it's like, if they're going to come up against me and try to kill me, it'd be better maybe for me to kill their pets so that I can have a little bit more control. I can talk to them. They're not going to be able to just take me out. As a game, like if it was a game, I'd be like, okay, I get that as a tactical strategic move. And I was thinking metaphorically and writer-wise, like from the writer's perspective, in terms of like, this is dreams, this is trauma, that I get why you would have the pets. But can you see what I mean when I say, like, if I'm thinking like a writer or a game designer or this, I get why the pets are there. But in world, like where these pets come from, they say they're rare, but does that mean, are there more of these? And like,
probably could be. They were probably created, I would assume.
They said they created them.
Yeah. Maybe I missed it, but like, why did the Akkas create this universe, or are they just manipulating it?
The Akkas created the company that analyzes what's going on. I would just say I believe. I believe that the catalyst for the creation of the company was Frill, because they were working for a company and they just said we did research.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like top secret, so we don't actually know.
Well, they had They were originally, when they made Frill, they were lonely and they were shut-ins and they were like being surveilled. And then they made Frill, and that's when they were working for some other company, and we don't know what they were doing. But
no, when they made Frill, before they made Frill, and after they made Frill, before she started going off the deep end, they were still working for the same company.
Right. But even before Frill like killed everybody, they had made their own foundation.
There's a scene where his wife is pregnant and Frill has all this disdain, and he says he's too busy running the company. I don't know if that was...
Well, they said they started their own thing.
Yeah, so maybe they were no longer a part of the project that they used to be.
Yeah, and that was before they weren't. Before they, because when they went to that party and everything, they already weren't. They were like becoming CEOs in their own right kind of thing when they met the wife. So before Frill like went crazy, they had already started their foundation.
I just think that their foundation had entirely separate interests than what it has now. That's what I mean by Frill was the catalyst.
Oh, for what it is now. Okay.
Yeah, because you see all their books was on the uptick of deaths within youth for females. And that started from them not being able to answer how his daughter died. She has that moment where she's like, Uncle, just wait till I get older, then we can get married. And he just like gives her a weird look. And then she does that lip pop that Frill always does.
Yeah, that was definitely creepy.
He asked her, Frill, did you do it? But he can't prove it, and Frill isn't interested in being direct with him. Frill is only interested in her emotions at that particular moment. And then they see this uptick of deaths in Japan, and they believe it's Frill, but they don't know how she's doing it, and they don't know for sure. So I think that's when their interest kind of shifted, and they created Japan Platy, the organization or whatever.
They creep the Japan Platy?
It said that was the headquarters for Japan Platy. I'll say that. And Nadu is the president, and Nadu's friend created her based on Nadu's sister, who's actually the original Nadu, Idu.
Yes, that was a super awesome twist. I was like, oh, no wonder her sister doesn't like her.
I don't think they created the parallel worlds. I think they're trying to understand it.
Okay, all right. I was wondering. I actually wanted to know more about Nadu's sister and like how Nadu grew up. I wanted to know more about her sister's story and like where'd she go?
Well, clearly her sister was an ass.
Well, clearly, but like also maybe her sister knew that she was AI or discovered it or found out and was like, hey, you're a fake.
Oh, you mean like why did she stab her?
I mean, I can kind of surmise why she stabbed her. Like, she probably found out that she wasn't like a real, normal human being. She looked like her and that was probably really weird. And she maybe was also a little bit jealous because Nina was probably perfect.
It all makes sense, right? Nadu's demeanor at the end. Frill is like, let's be friends. You're just like me. They're both trying to be human. Throughout the whole story, Nadu's trying to understand human emotions. And she repeatedly says, I can only think of stuff in a logical manner. When they talk about what they want to do in the future, Nadu's the only one that's like, I'm going to be doing the same thing I'm doing now. Can't see myself doing anything else. And it's like, but you love books. Don't you want to be a writer? And she's like, I'm pretty sure I'm just going to be doing this.
And that's, she's already the owner of a company. Like, I'm sure it's just going to grow. And, that makes sense because she doesn't have the same ideals that normal girls have.
Yeah, she doesn't understand that. Mm-hmm. And they just had the trickery with her being birthed by in vitro fertilization. And then, like you said, at the end, we get to reveal that she is the AI who was created by her friend.
It's cool to see her emotions, though, because she really did care about Kotobuki, You can really see, her real emotion. I would have, I think we all definitely thought she was a real person. I think that's, the main thing they want us to contemplate.
Even when she saves her sister and they're analyzing her dreams with Kotobuki, her sister asks her, what are you going to do, Nadu? And Nadu's like, oh, I want to go back because I miss my friends. And she's like, you don't belong there. You're not like them. You belong here. And then when she leaves to kind of try to find herself, she's afraid to tell them that she's not real. Once she gains the courage and tries to call, she's too afraid to do it. And then she has a breakdown because she realized she kind of repeated her past mistake. And then at the end, we get this promising ending where she's like, I'm going back in.
Change is hard.
No, I agree. I didn't think that was out
of character.
Yeah, put it that way.
It was very realistic, you've been burned before, you were super close to this girl and she didn't tell you this big secret, just like her friend who committed suicide and had this big secret and didn't tell her, It's understandable how she would feel that way and she's like, I can't deal with this, it hurts too much, and that's very real. She wants to get burned by the same situation twice. Even if it's not the same situation, it just feels that way.
Just the guilt over not even having the nuts to pick up a phone, It would be like Momoe, rather than telling them to their face, I am not going back in. I don't want to do this. They're just calling you and you just looking at your phone ring and you're like, I'm just leaving these motherfuckers on read. I completely understand. I've done that before where, I think a lot of people have done that where they just look at the phone ring and they don't want to deal with something. So they just pretend like it didn't happen,
Oh, yeah, of course. To be fair, like that's the reason most of us text instead of call, is because like, we're doing stuff. So, and I completely am guilty of that.
I'm usually not doing stuff. I just feel weird about talking to people on the phone.
Yeah, I get it. I understand that too. Like, who calls people really anymore? It's rare.
I call people. I don't call people. I call a person. I think the majority of people share your sentiment. I remember being younger and they just like, you just be on the phone for like 6 hours talking. I'm like, yeah.
I've done that too. I used to talk to people for hours and hours.
Oh yeah, I know.
Oh yeah, same. In high school, I definitely did that. I was always on the phone in high school, like always. Look at that, couldn't go anywhere. Like it's a little different.
Yeah, you grew up in the Shire, so your situation was different.
I live in the city, just not a big city, like a suburb.
Bilbo
This
Baggins.
is before I had a license. Before I had a car, like different.
I'm just giving you crap like I always do.
Yes, you do.
Shire or Bilbo Baggins, those are not insults. That's.
Maybe not to you, but you're
Not to you.
yeah, you're a different individual.
Wait, are they to you?
I mean,
She knows the context that I'm saying them in.
how do I explain this? He's been on me with this for years now.
It's never gonna stop.
I don't understand.
It's okay.
Oh my gosh, I just realized I've known you for a long time. For like 6 years now?
I don't know. Maybe.
Wow. Yeah, because I've been dating
Ron Measley.
for 6 years now. So
Oh,
like,
this is
You
sweet.
knew me less than the time that you dated Drew.
Ron Measley.
We just out here putting my man's real name out here. You knew me. You didn't know me as long as you started dating.
Ron Measley.
You were already dating
Ron Measley.
for a while before me and you became friends.
no, but I met you. Well, yeah, I knew who he was. We weren't dating yet though.
Yes, you guys were. When we first met, you and
Ron Measley.
had already been dating.
Oh, in training I wasn't.
All right, player.
I was talking to him, but like we weren't dating. I didn't live in the same city. I still lived in.
Not this time.
Okay. All right.
I knew, like we talked.
I guess, you know what? I just realized that I completely erased us meeting before we got hired at our job. And I just started it
Yeah.
off at us, like, working our first flight together.
Yeah, no.
So, yes, I'm wrong.
We got hired at the same time.
I completely forgot about everything before that. Sorry. Who's your favorite egg person? You already said yours because you said that was your favorite character in general. It was Kotobuki.
Yeah, I mean, she wasn't an egg though.
She was an egg person. She was in the dream world. She counts as an egg person.
But she didn't hatch. You can't be an egg person if you weren't in an egg.
She was an egg. How about you, MadKat?
My favorite egg person.
Mm-hmm.
I feel weird because I didn't.
You didn't have an attachment to him?
Yeah, I didn't see them as like. So a lot of times in a show.
Evil. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have said that.
No, that's what I was thinking. I just didn't want to say it, so thank you. Keeping me honest. So in a show, in a movie, like one thing I don't like is like a lot of times when they have ghosts and you don't know like how much of this ghost it can affect me, how much, what are their powers, what can they do? And I always justify it as like, to explain it to myself, they are not personalities, they are just echoes of what they once were. So they're not going to have new memories, they're not going to have new opinions on things and current events and like who's the president or whatever. It's just going to be emotions and thoughts and feelings that they had once, as if like a recording. You're playing back random sections of that life that used to be. So that's how I saw these, is you're watching like a recording.
Okay, it's like not a complete person, it's a moment of a person.
Right. So I didn't see them as characters as much as
You didn't get from
that's
any
bad.
of their
weren't-
backstories
Yeah,
about...
you saw a lot of their emotions and how they felt about stuff. So they were people. Obviously, you're only gonna get a slice of someone's life anytime you meet them. So it's wrong. I'll say that it's wrong of me to. But if you look at the show, I was saying earlier how the main characters are so three-dimensional compared to most shows that I see. If I look at the egg people, they were not as. I mean, I didn't see them as fully fleshed and rounded and relatable as some of the others. So who's your favorite?
Kurumi. Saijo Kurumi, the first girl.
No, yeah, I remember her, and I was thinking, I thought it was funny, even though it's not like, oh, I liked her character. I thought it was funny, the first couple, how it was kind of an awkward thing. And later on, it's like, I'm the hero, stick with me if you want to live. I'm going to take out these bad guys. But early on, like when you meet Kurumi, it was like, what's going on here? I don't know what this relationship is going to be like. Should I be nice to them? Or are they just going to walk away now? And I very much appreciated that interaction. So that was my favorite interaction. I don't know if I can say that's my favorite care of the people, you know?
I automatically assumed that yours would be Mako and Miko.
See, when I was thinking about how one-dimensional these characters were, the number one thing in my head was Mako and Miko.
For me, it was Ali, the girl that was obsessed with her beauty.
I saw her as like a boss, as like a bad guy. She was her own like worst enemy, right? So I saw her as more like if I'm playing Dungeons and Dragons or something. Puzzle. You have to look at her and see which places to press and which things to do to get past it, as opposed to someone who you get to know.
I'm sorry, did you just say you have to look at her and see which places to press?
Buttons like buttons. Statues can have buttons and
Like one of the traumas. They're about to kill you. You're like, I just want to see what buttons to press. You tripping. Let me press the buttons.
Oh my god.
Yeah, for you, I
Great.
assumed that you would either say Mako and Miko or Yoshida.
I feel attacked, you saying that those would be my favorite.
I liked Mako and Mika, and I liked Yoshida.
You shouldn't feel attacked because they're my favorite. I loved Mako and Miko. Every time they were in a scene, I was like, oh, you guys are so cute. This is great. They're just so they're just so optimistic.
They are cute, but like I felt like cliched cute.
No, I felt like Mako and Miko on the surface were very cliche, but I feel like there was stuff there that showed that there were more to them than just that. They were very understanding when her friend died. They tried to help her. They literally explained obsessive fans and didn't demonize them. They were like, yo, we're not all like this.
Yeah, I loved them. I thought they were great.
They took something that's typically portrayed negatively and made you want to root for them and made them endearing and showed, yes, they're fanatics about their interests, but they're not complete fucking airheads like they're always portrayed to be.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I really, really liked them. Like, I'd be friends with them. They were super positive. They were caring. Like, they were fun.
Which one? It was like Miwa or Mizuki. Which one was the one that like made the bad guy turn the back so that Omoe could stab him?
Oh, I don't remember.
I think that was two people. I think that was Miwa and Mizuki.
Yeah.
Because Miwa did it because the guy was molesting her. And then Mizuki, I think, was like Momoe's first girl to be saved. So she didn't get as much expose as Miwa.
Well, I think it was Miwa. And it was kind of mysterious for me because I was like, oh, is she like giving herself up or is she playing into this trick? You know, like working together with the hero. And it worked out in the end. You know, Momoe got her shot in. I liked the idea of a victim helping be the hero in the story.
I think towards the end, a lot of them did, to be honest. I mean, even in the beginning, Miwa definitely had the most, like, it was hard to watch.
That was very hard.
Yeah, like if this was a movie and I was trying to win like the Academy Award, I'd want to play her role if everybody just got one scene.
I think the Academy Award would probably go to Shino or Miwa.
Which one was Shino?
Which one was that?
Shino was the occultist.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, well,
I would say Miwa. Miwa had more star power.
I liked Miwa more than Shino, I can say that.
I mean, I don't mean to trivialize Miwa's backstory, but I just think there are a lot of films that are about that.
No, the backstory was, yes, but that scene I thought was, for an actor, hypothetically, for an actor would be a lot.
Miko Mako, Academy Award nominee.
Yeah. No, you guys won me over on Mika, Mako, and Mika.
Academy Award nominees. Yeah, you stereotype the hell out of them. You completely missed their story.
I'm looking back. Hey.
You hating ass crap.
I'm trying to.
Anti-fan.
It wasn't because they were fans that I was just lumping them in. But yeah, I like them now. You convinced me.
I chose Kurumi because I think it made the best use of contemplative silence and really telling a life story with just a moment of silence. When they're sitting in the cafeteria, you can tell they're both longing for a bond that neither had.
Yeah, I thought that was gorgeous. And again, the first episode was one of my favorite episodes because I was like learning about this world, but I didn't want to say her after you said her name. So
it doesn't matter. I didn't create this. We're not kids. I picked that character.
I call dibs.
You can't play Ryu. I picked Ryu. Actually, I'm still that way in fighting games. I'm like, bro, don't pick the same person as me.
Funny. That just made this way better.
I was playing Pokemon and my nephew was like, I want that one. I was like, you only want that one because I picked that one. And he just looked so sad. And I was like, I'm sorry. I was like, get your own identity, loser. I didn't say that part.
You're really good at...
We're gonna make a better nephew.
Anyways, if there was a sequel, I would like to see a sequel with the stories of all of the egg people. I think that would be most captivating.
That would actually. Like, I would definitely win for that.
Oh, I don't think I'd watch that.
Yeah, of course, I didn't even remember them. Like, the egg people.
Ain't nobody trying to watch no goddamn AKB48.
Are they still around? Are they still recruiting members?
Yeah, they are.
Wow. I wanted to add one more thing that we didn't talk about, but I wanted to, and that MadKat commented that earlier in the message board. The quote was that you brought up, and I wanted to talk about it too, so that's perfect. When Uda Aka and the regular Aka, when they were talking about suicide, and they're like, men are goal-oriented and women are emotion-oriented. Boys and girls' suicides mean different things. Women are impulsive and easily influenced by others' voices. What the hell?
Yeah, how do you guys feel about that?
I feel not like, as a female, obviously, like I have to
very
take
emotional
issue
about
with
it.
Just yeah, like I mean, just nice. Just based on this alone, I mean, like I have to stand up for women and say that yes, we are emotion oriented, but that doesn't mean that we are necessarily influenced by others' voices more than boys. You know, like that's not actually true.
I'm about to mansplain. No, I'm joking.
Oh my god. Like, boys and girls suicide do not mean different things. They are both suicide. They are both super sad, in most cases preventable, and for very similar reasons, actually.
I think.
I just want to say, every time you say "I think" and "well," I get nervous. Go ahead.
I'm trying to be good. I think boys are subject to a lot of emotional judgment and emotional distress and emotional expectations, just like girls are. I think it's different expectations and judgments, and I think a lot of times it can make boys show less emotion, as if they're less emotional people. But underneath, it's still an emotional reaction to others' emotions. I mean, that's always been my theory.
Boys are typically taught that showing emotion is a sign of weakness for men.
Right. I think people are taught, hey, doing stuff is more important than feeling things. So do stuff. And so boys end up doing stuff and then making fun of other people for feeling things because they themselves are kind of like making fun of themselves for feeling things. So I think that happens a lot. But it may also be that, for all I know, because I've never been a woman, so maybe if I was, I would be more or less task oriented or emotional. I don't know. That's me.
Also, can we just for a moment look at the fact that saying that like there's two options, right? Emotion oriented or goal oriented. Like
right.
Women can't be goal oriented. Are you kidding me?
Ooh,
What
I
is
do have
that?
another thing.
What is
so
that?
Here's something as
y'all
just
can't
a
be
pun, and I
goal-oriented. All y'all want to do is watch Kim Kardashian.
So within the construct that they created, I was like, I had to look, because that's a lot of this show, right? Is a lot of the show is like, logically, I think this could probably like when I'm looking at the science of the pets and the dreams and the dimension and creating androids, I have to be like, well, that's not how that would go. But then I'm like, well, they made the universe. So if I'm assuming this is how the universe is going, then I have to make my judgments from that jumping off point, right? So when he said go, and the Akkas, I can't remember exactly what they've said that made me think, oh, maybe they're not right. Right? The Akkas not only like certain things when they're not talking to the girls, I assume when they're talking to each other that they believe what they're saying, but at the same time, they could still be wrong. So, and the show has shown that. So I feel like maybe they had them say this, but not 100% saying it to the audience like as if it was true. Just showing like this is how they feel about it.
Yeah, it's like they're trying to approach it from a science point, but I'm like, ugh. I think the show and the writers definitely knew what they were doing with this comment. It's extremely controversial, and I think that's
very
in their
in your
character.
face.
That's in their character realm. Like, they wrote it for a reason.
It feels, it doesn't feel out of
But
character.
still, like, just the fact that it exists and that those were the two options. I was like,
because
what?
you have to, okay, so it's easy to be like, hey, you can't just say something like that. But at the same time, if you don't say anything like that, then you're not going to have that conversation, right?
Yeah,
and I don't
exactly.
know. I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, to me, I'm like, well, I have tons of emotions. I have any given day, I feel like I have more emotions than the average person next to me. But I don't know.
That could very well be true.
Like, I work at a place where like 98% probably of the people I work with are men. So the guy next to me has been
Work
taught
at
his
Home
whole
Depot?
life. I work in maintenance. I work on.
Not this time.
I know what you do. Our
Okay.
answers can
Just
clearly
kidding.
define our personalities. Because she said Home Depot and I said Chippendales.
Oh, I didn't hear what you said.
I didn't hear
I
what
thought
you
you
said
both-
either.
Yeah, I thought you both said Home Depot.
No, I said Chippendales.
I mean,
That's
fair
not
enough.
true.
I mean, your comment makes more sense because obviously I have seen women at Home Depot.
Well, there's a commercial.
Not very many.
And I think it's for Home Depot. No, it's not. It's for Poise. It has this woman. She goes to the store, and there's a narrator, and she's like, "Oh, Deborah went to the store, but because she didn't have her tool belt, she didn't get any help loading her cement." And you see a guy like working there, and he's on his phone looking at her, like struggling with these bags of cement, and he's like, "I'm not gonna help you because you're a woman." And it's like, for those times, you have to be a tough woman, poise in your pants, right? And I always look at that.
Yeah, what the hell is
It's-
Poise?
What?
Is it
What
like
do
a-
you poison your pants? What?
Poise is a company that makes feminine pads, feminine hygiene
Oh,
projects.
see,
products.
from not knowing what they were, the way you explained it, I thought that Poise was like illegal testosterone shots.
Obviously, I use some feminine products, and I definitely forgot that they were a company. I'm so sorry. Now that you say it, I remember that they are a company that does sell them. I just don't buy them, so like I just don't know.
You nasty.
At the risk of sounding ignorant, I am bothered by this commercial because it starts with the premise that, like, because she's a woman, this guy at Home Depot, off-brand Home Depot, is not helping her. And I was like, that seems like the opposite. I would imagine if she had a problem with that guy, it'd be because he's too much like getting in her business. He wouldn't be like, "Oh, she's a woman. I'm gonna help that fat balding hairy guy over there. He looks like I want to go."
I feel attacked. Oh, joking. When did you watch this commercial?
I see it almost every day.
Okay,
Oh,
I just
okay.
haven't seen commercials in a long time. That's probably why.
So you said, Stardust, that they knew what they were doing with this line.
Yeah, they knew. Like, it's in line with their characters, right? Like, there's been a lot of gender issues in this anime in general.
So you were saying the Akkas know what they were doing with this line.
Yes.
They were manipulating the girls.
And the writers. Yeah, like, it's in line with, like, kind of the whole problem, with creating a girl in the first place.
If it's the writers, then I was going to ask you, what do you think the writers think that the response is going to be, like, gender-wise, feminism-wise? But if it's the Akkas, I was going to ask you, like, what do you think? Because the Akkas saying it to the girls, because it was at a time when the girls were like, when they met Momoe, right? And they were like, "Oh, wait, you didn't tell us there were boys here." And I thought that was such a weird thing, too, because they're like, "Oh, they're boys? Oh, I guess boys commit suicide, too, don't they?" And I thought, even if Momoe is a boy, that doesn't mean he's here trying to save a boy that committed suicide. Just like hypothetically, in a world where no boys committed suicides, you could still have boys going to get eggs because boys can be friends with girls that commit suicide, right? Like, that was a whole weird thing. But
I think that should be the
seemed
opening of this podcast, because that was a very weird sentence and just perfect for this episode.
Boys can be friends with girls that commit suicide. Is that the
Boys can go buy eggs to go save girls that commit suicide, because it doesn't have to be a girl. Just the whole, like, going back, that has to be like, that's a great intro sentence to this anime.
But they were asking questions, and the Akkas were like being evasive because maybe they didn't want to like reveal Momoe's history and background and whatever, and so they were like saying this stuff to just like, "Oh, don't worry about it. Here's some other stuff to look at, shiny," right?
Yeah.
So the Akkas it might be a sign of how unreliable the Akkas are, and how you can't always trust what they're going to say, and how manipulative they are, which I really wanted to delve into how they are, because, okay, when you first are introduced to them, they're the voice in the dreams, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And one of them appears as a crumply old, like, toilet paper, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, break the egg. And I was thinking, again, from like a Dungeon and Dragon standpoint, hypothetically, if you're in this situation, you have a magical egg and toilet paper tells you to break it, like, don't break that egg. Like, that's a bad idea. This toilet paper is clearly evil.
I would not. Kip, would you?
In the first episode, she was constantly not sure whether she was dreaming or awake. If I was aware that I was dreaming, hell yeah, I'd break that egg.
Would you? Because it's like, it seems like a Pandora's box of possibilities.
I'm not sure
and like,
if I'm
they could be
dreaming
very
or
bad.
awake.
That's why I
not
said
sure.
if I knew it was a dream, I would break the egg.
Yeah, but she wasn't sure. You just said that, right?
Right,
I'm
but I was
sure,
saying
yeah.
if I knew, I would break the egg. If I didn't
What if
know,
you didn't know?
then I probably wouldn't break the egg. It's like when you take a sleeping
Wouldn't
capsule
have.
or a pill, and they say on the bottle, if you can't remember if you took one or not, don't fucking take one. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
If the toilet paper is talking to you, telling you to break an egg, and you don't know whether you sleep or you awake, you have no idea. Maybe just walk your black ass out the bathroom.
Exactly. So So they come to I and they're like, hey, we can make all your dreams come true. We can grant you wishes if you just follow us into this deep dark cave. And then they appear as toilet paper and trash cans and voices saying, hey, forget what you want to do. Just break the freaking egg. Do what we tell you to do. And I was like, these guys are clearly evil, right?
Right. They're manipulating her to do this, but we don't know why.
And they are manipulative, and they are kind of, bad guys in certain ways. But I felt like that was a setup that they never really paid off.
What do you mean?
What do you mean?
Them being
Because I felt like there was going to be an aspect of villainy to them.
This whole series is like, there are mistakes that you made in the past. There are wrongdoings that you did in the past, and you have to confront them, or you have to try to confront them at least. And I think that they did that. Did they do it in the most great way? No. But when I spoke about high intellect and occasionally your moral compass slipping, I think that they are like, hey, whatever to justify the means. Not always whatever, but there are some things where we realize that I have to get our hands dirty. Yeah, it's kind of a messed up, nonchalant way of saying it, but
Yeah, there was a scene in Jumanji when Robin Williams, he didn't want to play anymore, right? And I can't remember the actress's name, but she's like, you don't have to play. Give me the dice. I think it might have been the other way around. And so they go and they're like, okay, you take the dice. And it was a trick where the hand that was going to grab the dice moves. And so it's like, oh, you rolled the dice. That's what happened. Haha, you got fooled. And I could have seen, like, it makes sense to me rather than like a violent outburst yelling, that kind of manipulation from the Akkas character-wise, where it's like, oh, it's okay. You're afraid to drop the egg, to break the egg. It's okay. Just give it to me. And then all of a sudden they drop it. Because it's clearly not, because the argument against it would have been they have to drop it purposefully, right? Otherwise the magic doesn't work. Except later she's like, oh, I'm not going to break this egg, and then it breaks, just falling off the table. So it doesn't have to be purposeful.
Oh,
so
yeah.
They could have just, hey, give the egg to the toilet paper, and then toilet paper drops the egg, and this is the situation you have now. It just seemed like an odd thing. Like, she wakes up in this dream, possibly a dream, possibly not, and she meets this bug. And it's like, I can take you to a faraway land where all your dreams come true. And that's not, usually that's like, well, this is clearly going to be the bad guy of the series. And I like it when you have these mentor characters that have a darkness to themselves. But the Akkas, their darkness seems more to be of like a blind spot to emotions, to people, the way people think, rather than, I would have liked to delve more into them manipulating people and being deceitful and them doing whatever it takes to fight their enemy, Frill.
Do you mean you wanted to see more of it, or you wanted to understand?
Yeah, I think I'd want to see more of that, because they're sitting there usually. I mean, they could be doing all sorts of stuff behind the scenes, but it seems like they're kind of taking a back seat to all this stuff now. Like, the company seems to run itself, and they're in this garden.
I mean, they weren't the main characters. They were the secondary characters. I felt like if you saw more of that, then it's not really contributing it to the narrative credibility of the story. At that point, you just like taking a side story and making it a main story.
Yeah, it might dilute, the emotions of the main characters and stuff like that. But in terms of credibility, I feel like there was a lot of stuff in the show that felt like I was saying earlier, you kind of have to take it as a springboard. Like, oh, this doesn't seem like how companies really would work normally, or how everything works. But it's like, oh, in this dreams. But you kind of have to take it on face value. And in terms of credibility for the story, it seems like it might have made more sense if they had shown more. Because they very much don't show you the back end of everything. It's like, oh, here's some tanks, scientific-y looking tanks in a dream world, and here's like an escalator, but it's going to lead, I don't know, did that lead down into the garden? There's a lot of stuff where it's like, oh, you don't have to worry about how this works, how this egg exists in the dream world and in the regular world, and going back and forth. Like, does it disappear from the physical world when they go to sleep? Is it tied? Like, there's a lot of questions it kind of asks you not to ask.
I think there's this thing in writing where, I can't remember, I'm going to paraphrase, but it was like, you don't have to have everything have complete detailed scientific accuracy, but you need to have enough of it to make all of the fantasy acceptable, where you're just like, oh, okay. And I think that for the most part, they did okay with that. So I could see how you can want more out of that, specifically with you saying, like, you have questions that they don't answer and they don't even address. And I have questions that they bring up, but they don't address. But for that particular sentiment, it didn't bother me.
Well, when I look at fantasy and science fiction, that's the line between them, is having to explain it. But when I first started the show, I was like, oh, they're in a dream, so they can show anything they want. It doesn't matter. And then later they're like, oh, there's a company that's like recording these dreams, and this is actually multiple dimensions that you're somehow traveling to, and also physical things we give you here are also physical things in the real world. And so it starts tying things together. scientifically that makes me like, otherwise I wouldn't have asked. If it had just been like, oh, we're so smart we know magic, versus we're so smart we're scientists that can make magic. If they hadn't done that, I wouldn't want to ask so many questions. Like if you invite science fiction, I feel like you invite questions usually. It seems like they know a lot of stuff and they didn't. The show was like, oh, but we're not. And like you said, they had to focus on the main characters. But if you're going to introduce a lot of that stuff and introduce it as science, it's going to be hard for me not to be like, oh, but what about
You didn't
over
buy
there?
into the credibility.
Right.
Okay.
It was hard. Like, I still like the show, obviously,
Yeah.
but it was hard for me because I kept my brain. I had to keep bringing my brain back to like, don't ask those questions though, because that's not what it's about. And it would be easy for me to say like these things are metaphors if they hadn't made it so scientific looking, sounding.
I think it's hilarious because we have this conversation every anime we watch where I'm just like,
Yeah, and
you couldn't suspend.
No, I can. It's just harder for me than it is for you.
I'm not saying, oh, you always do this. I'm saying like, it's just funny.
Well, this is significantly different than Promised Neverland running up a wall with
I wasn't even bringing up that little big head boy.
I think this is a slightly different situation because they're throwing a whole bunch of stuff at you. And the Akkas, what they tend to do, one thing that is in line with their character, is when the girls ask questions, they throw a lot of this stuff at them so that the girls see like what they want them to see, and they don't see the other stuff that the Akkas don't want them to see yet. And that seemed like also what the writers were doing to me, where I have a question, but then they throw something else out, and they're like, oh, he's not going to ask about that if we just throw this out and this out. This is crazy,
Very possibly. That could be a true thing.
Maybe the writers are the Akkas.
Could be.
Going back to, I mean, they wrote the fucking characters, but they're characters. Going back to what Star was saying about the statement that they made about suicide and the difference between male and female suicide. I never got to say my statement.
Oh. What was your statement about their statement?
Well, let me tell you what I think.
Okay.
As a gun-toting patriot, I feel like... No, I'm joking. No, So there's this thing, because I could sense
Amazing.
the annoyance in Star's voice. There's this thing where sometimes somebody might say to you, who wrote this? Why would somebody write this? You got to be a twisted person. And I'm like, you have to separate the writer from the fiction that they create. Unless you write an autobiography that's called Why I Became a Serial Killer, that's a little different. Speaking of serial killer, I remember somebody said that about Hannibal. Who will write this? Who wrote this story? Why? I was like, yeah, it takes a particular individual, but that doesn't mean that the individual is evil.
Yeah.
You create what emotions you want people to feel. Disgust is an emotion.
It is indeed.
I imagine she was asking if maybe the writers believed that.
I think that the writers were writing from the perspective of the character Akkas that they created.
Right. Who are scientists who presumably have done tests and came to that conclusion through study.
Even with that, the Akkas, they both admit at a point in the series, who are we to say how a female should be?
Yeah, they're not psychologists or anything. They're programmers.
I think that obviously people commit suicide for different reasons, but there are hardships that society places on women that they don't place on men and vice versa. I think that their statement was a broad generalization in the way that it was presented. You could have easily corrected that by saying studies suggest that the majority of female population, and saying the majority doesn't mean all encompassing. I'm giving my opinion. Shut up.
Yeah. Sorry.
Whenever I can start being annoyed, my instinct is to increase that annoyance because I'm stupid.
Oh my god, you're so rich!
Women can be goal-oriented. There are plenty of women that are goal-oriented. It's not something that's exclusive to the male gender. But I just think it was a statement that was worded poorly. And I also think it's a reflection to show that these scientists are constantly involved in their work. They were monitored forever and kept in an enclosed environment forever. So they didn't really have too much of a worldly experience outside their research. And when you do research via text, and you also do research via real world application. And they didn't necessarily have that to a high degree as much as they did text. So of course they're going to have this opinion, and they're going to state it, as they stated everything in the series, in this very broad, flat tone without much thought behind how it's going to affect people. Even what you are indirectly saying, even though you might not mean to say it in that manner, I don't know if that makes sense, but...
So you think that they, this isn't their area of expertise, so they believe what they researched on Facebook and that kind of stuff?
I think there's text application and there's real world applications. And when people do scientific studies, when you do a science journal, you have to do both. And I think they only had one. I mean, if you look at it, these girls that they manipulated also kind of returned their emotion to them. They even say at core aspects in the series, Himari, his daughter, returned our emotion to us. Frio returned our emotion to us. So it's constantly women there returning their humane side to them and kind of saying like, hey, you're 150% analytical and that's not okay. You need to get back your moral compass. And they're constantly wrestling internally with their moral compass over and over. And one Aka realizes it and the other, or I should say, I believe that one Aka confronts it more than the other, but because the other was affected by things more closely because it was his daughter, it was his wife, there's a bit more anger in him than the other. Anyways, go ahead.
That's one interpretation versus them lying, like they were wrong versus they're lying, or versus it was an overgeneralization and what they're saying is basically right, but they were just oversimplifying it so you didn't get the whole context.
Yeah, I believe their statement didn't speak more towards women and men's suicide. It spoke more towards their characters.
Yeah,
In any case, boys, I am tired. I need to go to sleep.
Here's what I'll do. Stardust, do you have any last things to say?
Good night.
Okay.
Ooh, Stardust, we might have to re-record your ending, but okay. Good night, Star.
I can wrap it up.
It's up to you.
Yeah, this is great. Like, even if you're not going to like it,
Mhm.
It can start good conversations, kind of like the one on that line that she said. There are things that are hard to talk about, for instance, suicide. A lot of people don't want to talk about suicide, which is why I appreciate this show for existing, because it makes, for instance, you and me talk about suicide where we wouldn't have, and I like that.
Mhm.
I wrote the note about how it did seem very rushed at the end, and then when I found out more stuff about the show, what I found out was it was, and so what that means to me is that, like, oh, maybe it was this bad, or maybe it wasn't. But the fact that I thought that before I read that a lot of people were, talking about it, made me feel like, oh, maybe I'm getting a feel for these patterns. Because you say a lot of things about anime sometimes where I'm like, well, I never would have seen that because I don't have that kind of eye for that kind of thing. But here I was like, oh, I saw that. I got it.
Yeah, I mean, this is an unmatched quality. Every bit of the quality, from the colors to the writing, the fact that the secondary and tertiary characters are the same quality as the main characters.
Yeah.
The framing and the camera work, especially within the first episode, how they frame Oto and Nagise on the steps. It's like everybody went in and was, for a moment, a master at their crafts.
Yeah, and I'm coming as a layman, so I can say, like, yeah, I did notice that quality, because even though I don't know that much about it, I did think it was a movie. I was fooled for that period of time, so I can look at that and say, oh, yes, you're right. So I appreciate it, because, a lot of times I'll watch a show or a TV show and I'll be like, oh, this is good and this is bad, versus I can't say, oh, somebody worked really hard on this, or this was rushed out, because some things that I like or some things I don't like were worked really hard on. Like there was a TV show that just got canceled and I was like, yep, that makes sense, because that was kind of dumb. And then the writers were saying like, oh, we really put our blood and sweat into that, sometimes literally, so we're really sad to see it go. And I was like, oh wow, they really worked that hard on that. But here I can see.
You can see it.
Yeah.
I won't make this long.
It's false. No way.
There is this common thing to shit on something. I've said this countless times. You can give your opinion on why you didn't like it, but you need to be constructive with your criticism. People that put like a size 500 font thumbnail and they're like, the show fucking sucks. I'm like, yo, people went to work and worked every day under inhumane conditions, without breaks, fucking sleeping at work, working on this. And you're just saying fuck you to all of them. Give constructive criticism, especially if you're a teenager. I can kind of be like, whatever, they're young and dumb. I was there too. But if you're a grown-ass person, like, grow the fuck up. Of all people, Kanye West said this, where he's like, I'm not going to shit on a doer. Everybody is always shitting on doers, but what the fuck are they doing?
Yeah, I was watching a Fast and Furious movie where Tyrese was on this jet, and the guy...
Fast and Furious spoilers. Here we go. Mad Cat's back.
No, because the guy I was watching it with, he's like, that's a tiny jet. And we all just looked at him and was like, how big is your jet? Like... And I look at the reviews and I see like you said, the big bold caps, like, this effing sucks. I'm like, oh, thank you. I know not to listen to you because you don't have a very long informed decision. I can skip that, go to the long ones, and I respect those opinions more than the cursing little ones. So I don't necessarily, like, you're like, oh, put more work into your criticisms, and that's probably the right perspective to have. But me, I appreciate sometimes when people have dumb criticisms, because I know as an easy ignore.
Yeah, no, I mean, you always look at things in a positive light, and I think that's a great quality of you. So, That's a way to get traffic because that's what's popular. I think it sucks. I just think like journalism, can we rediscover our integrity and respect? Vice versa, you know, I know channels that refuse to criticize something even if they don't like it. So by the end of it, you're going to walk away thinking, good. And then you realize that it's very bad. You go back and watch that person and you can see them struggling not to say how much they hate something. I feel like if you make a video, you write a script, you record a video, you edit that video, you save that video, you render that video, you upload that video to YouTube.
2,000 years later.
You know, there's like the people that like, I don't know, let's say like said something racist. And I'm like, yo, you had 15, even at the editing process, you should have been like, yo, what the hell was I thinking? But that's besides the point. I did enjoy the series. It's not without its flaws. The narrative didn't quite fully deliver. I still think even with its flaws, they did something different and they succeeded in doing something different. It's a series that's always going to be memorable for me because of its level of quality and other aspects. And I look forward to people trying to improve upon it.
The last thing I want to ask you about is the flowers, because you guys went on about the flowers.
I will say earlier, the flower that I was referring to is a wisteria. When Stardust asked me what flower was by her feet, I believe it was a wisteria. Anyways, go ahead.
I don't get anything about the flowers.
You're not the only one. There was one flower where I was like, I don't know what that one is. I remember when we spoke about Hereditary, and I was like, if you don't know a lot about demonology, which I don't expect your common person to be like, oh, I know all the demons. Right? You won't fully appreciate this movie. And I feel like with Wonder Egg Priority or Koi no Katachi, because I feel like Yamada made it super popular. Very talented woman. Anyways, I feel like with flower language, there is a lot that you're going to miss. With Nagise, they tell her character way before the show actually tells her character. You get hints at her character in the first episode very clearly, but it didn't click until a little bit later because I was like, well, this flower means this, but it can also mean this. So I'm confused. And then it becomes difficult because, like I said, they mean different things in different languages. I have to go back and study and watch stuff, but it's something that I enjoy doing if the premise and the show executed well enough to gain my interest, which the show did. There's a lot of Egyptian metaphors that I believe are present that are over my head, but I can sense it with Eye. Her name is Eye.
You're smart, mother.
Which is, I believe, love. And there's also the Eye of Ra. One of them has a pet that's a snake, but he has like the wings. There's a song that's very like African Middle Eastern sounding on the soundtrack, and it's done in the scene that's kind of desert-like, if you will. I feel like there's a lot there. I'll probably watch it again sometime next year.
I think when you say, oh, you're not going to fully, I don't know if you said fully or wholly appreciate.
Yeah, fully appreciate it.
Yeah, this.
Yeah.
Sometimes people don't get everything in a movie or a show like Hereditary, and so they discount it. Right? They're like, oh, this doesn't make sense. They were putting in random things.
You say it sometimes, but I think when people don't get stuff, they almost always discount it, especially when it comes to films.
Well, when I looked at Wonder Egg Priority, like I've scrolled through some of the videos again, and I noticed like, oh, that is a specific flower that you'll see here. But when I watched it the first time, I wouldn't be able to say like, oh, all these random flowers are messing up the show because I didn't get it. It wasn't something that would detract from someone that's not getting it at all, as opposed to some things where they put in symbolism here and there and somebody watching it thinking that it's random stuff will dislike it. I didn't have that opportunity here because I was like, oh, that's pretty, and then they went off onto something else. It was very much embedded so that someone who knows it might appreciate it.
You're rewarded for your deeper knowledge of
right, but you're not punished for not knowing stuff. You know, they criticize the Marvel movies a lot of times for that when they bring in references from other things, and it's like, well, this movie is not going to appeal to people who haven't seen these, 10 movies or whatever.
Those movies are sequels. I'll never understand why people have that argument for a film that's a sequel. They're punishing me because I didn't watch the first movie. Well, bitch, it's a trilogy. Like, I don't know. That's like me watching the second Lord of the Rings. I don't know shit about Lord of the Rings. That's like me watching the second one, and then I'm like, I don't know who Samwise Gamgee is.
Well, I don't criticize movies like the Marvel movies for doing that. I just think it's a very bold move for these movies to do that, where it's like they're kind of alienating certain people.
Yeah.
That aren't willing to look past that. Whereas in Wonder Egg Priority, I don't feel alienated at all for not knowing Egyptian metaphors or flower language. I think they did it subtly enough
to where you didn't feel left out.
Yeah. A dumb guy like me can still feel like he's smart.
Certainly not dumb. I get what you mean. And it's a hard thing to do.
Yeah.
But yeah, I agree with what you're saying on that. The last thing I want to say, As with anything we discuss, if you are interested in it and pique your interest, check it out. Don't go to one person and just be like, oh, well, this person didn't like that, so I'm not going to like it. Even if you guys do typically agree, I think you're doing yourself a disservice. Discover how you feel about something. Don't discover how you feel about something vicariously through someone else, because you could run the risk of missing out on something that you might find beautiful.
Yes, that is inarguably true. But I think there's a skill to listening to what somebody says and the opinions they have, and being able to dissect from it, like, what facts you can get from it.
Epilogue. The next day.
Okay, so this is pretty much an afterword for Stardust. She was a little sleepy prior, so this is her final thoughts on the series as a whole.
Okay,
this
so
will be
final
with
thoughts. Shut the fuck up, man. Trying to talk over here. Why is it some guy always jumps in right when you're about to say something important?
Cause I got shit to mansplain.
You stay out of this. Okay. If you guys like magical girl themes, which I do, with cinematic features that you can see in like beautiful animated movies like Your Name or anything from probably Ghibli, anything like that, like, and you're just craving some psychological underpinning and, you know, young girls working through trauma, stuff like that. You know, the trauma that adults have left them with. And this anime will definitely satisfy you. It satisfied me, and I highly recommend it for anyone. It's actually really, really good in so many ways. You won't regret watching it. It will definitely move you. It will make you think, and there's a lot more beneath the surface. You can probably watch it a few times. And yeah, that's what I think, and I hope you guys watch it. That's all. See you next time. Bye-bye.